both in court as well as all attorneys. The jurors are not present. Counsel have indicated you want to discuss something.
Very briefly, Your Honor, I'm not clear on the purpose, but Mr. Cuneo has indicated he's put 4 times the photographs up on the bulletin board. And I take it to cross-examine my client with him, and I'm objecting to the use of Exhibit 95. Based on my client's testimony thus far, he has no knowledge of that particular angle or depiction. Mr. Cuneo apparently made some remarks to Ms. Lansing that the reason for using that photograph is because of Lyle Menendez's testimony. And I don't see how cross-examining my client on it is appropriate. He didn't testify to anything that leads to that.
Well, as I recall, photograph 95, it is a photograph of Mrs. Menendez on the floor depicting coroner's wound number 7.
It's the legs.
Well, that's coroner wounds number 7, according to my notes anyway.
Yeah, it's the one on the, Mr. Deputy Wolf.
Just turn it, the board, just turn the board. Just turn the board. All right. Shows both the legs of Mr. Menendez and the lower torso and body of Mrs. Menendez.
Correct.
And
I'm objecting to that being shown to my client.
and the basis of your objection is that he didn't describe this in his direct testimony?
He described it in his cross on his door. Hasn't described anything about that being receiving those injuries.
Mr. Kuriyama?
Yes, Your Honor. It appears that some of the wounds that Mrs. Menendez suffered were suffered as she laid on the ground, on the carpet. Both defendants have testified that there was only one shot after they had reloaded. It's my belief that Mrs. Menendez could not withstand the 9 wounds that she suffered prior to the fatal contact wound that Lyle Menendez has testified that he gave to her in her left cheek. I believe that she, at some point, dropped to the ground. She suffered more wounds on the ground, and I'm going to question Erik Menendez with respect to that.
Did you wish to be heard further?
Well, if he questions him with respect to that and shows he has a basis upon which to comment on the photograph, that's one thing, but thus far there's been no situation.
Well, certainly the prosecution has the right to display these crime scene photographs to the witness and cross-examine him about them, and whether he does or does not recognize the scenes depicted are matters for him to answer before the jury and for the jury to evaluate his credibility based upon his answers. But it's certainly an appropriate area of cross-examination. Anything else before the jury comes in?
We're still trying to deal with that scheduling matter.
All right, as soon as you have some information, let me know.
They wanted to do it tomorrow. I don't know. Right.
Well, just let me know when you get some further information. All right, let's have both jury panels in place. With the cross-examination of the witness, would you state your name again for the record, please?
Erik Galen Menendez.
I'll remind you that you're still under oath. You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you've testified that your mother and your brother Lyle were about the same size, correct?
No, Lyle was roughly 2 to 3 inches taller than her.
And you indicated that you believed your brother's about 5'11".
5'10", somewhere around there.
And your mother was measured at 5'2" by the coroner. Isn't that correct?
And that would be impossible.
That's impossible?
Reality.
I'm sorry?
That mistakes the testimony.
All right, it's objection is sustained to the form of the question. Answer is stricken.
If the coroner had measured your mother at 62 inches, 5'2", would that be inaccurate?
Yes, it would.
Now, Mr. Menendez, you indicated, well, first of all, when you said that your mother and your brother were roughly the same size, were you trying to mislead the juries?
No, I was not.
Into thinking that your mother was bigger than she was?
No.
To make you more believable when you said you were scared of her?
No.
Were you exaggerating?
No, I wasn't.
Mr. Menendez, you said that when you entered into the family room on the 20th of August, you were the first one into that room, correct?
Yes, I was.
And you indicated that the first person you saw was your father.
Yes.
And you said that he was standing up.
Yes, he was.
Do you remember the testimony of your brother who followed you into that room? Is that right?
Yes, he followed me into the room.
Testified that your father was in the process of rising from the couch? Do you
No, I don't
remember
think
that?
he said that.
You don't think he said that?
No, I don't believe so.
Would that be accurate?
No, it wouldn't.
You've indicated that you fired at the first figure you saw.
No, I just started firing as soon as I came in the room. I don't know who I was firing at.
And at the time that you first entered that room, you saw your father first, correct?
Yes.
And you went right into the room.
Yes.
And did you fire as soon as you got through the threshold of the doors?
That's my recollection. I don't know exactly at what point I fired. I just remember firing right after I got into the room.
Is your recollection that you hit your father first?
I don't know.
As you entered into the room, you kept firing.
Yes.
And you indicated that you loaded 5 cartridges into your shotgun, is that right?
Yes, I believe it was 5.
And at first, when you put in the birdshot, you had loaded 2 cartridges, correct?
Yes.
And you thought that that was sufficient.
At first, before Saturday night, when my dad was banging on the door, and then I realized that I thought I was going to die because 2 shells, it just didn't seem enough for me right then.
So that's what you were thinking about when you loaded.
When I loaded
Your 5 cartridges.
No, on Saturday night I was thinking, why didn't I load more? And on Sunday I loaded all the way I could.
So that was you loaded as many as you could. You're not sure how many you loaded then?
As many as I could.
Did you hear your brother shooting as you entered? Did he shoot as soon as he came through the doors?
I just remember all sorts of noise, banging and so on. I don't remember whether the noise was coming from my gun or from his.
Now, you remember there was testimony by the autopsy surgeon that there was a contact wound to the back of your father's head, correct?
Yes.
To the back of his head.
Yes.
Did you see your brother go behind your father at any time?
No, I didn't know about that one until after I was arrested.
Where was your brother during the time that you were firing?
I assumed he was to my right. I didn't see him. All I saw was what was right in front of me in the fire.
And what was right in front of you?
The fire of the gun.
All you saw is a flame?
Yes. That's what I saw. It was the flame, not the fire.
And you didn't see what you were shooting at?
No. I may have at the time. I have no memory of it. I have very little memory of what happened inside there.
Why is that?
I don't know why that is.
Now, when you talked to Dr. Oziel, you told him you had vivid images of what you had done. Is that right?
I had vivid images of what I saw after, but not of what I had done.
So all you could see was the flame coming from your gun. You couldn't see where your gun was shooting.
I knew it was shooting in front of me, but I didn't know where.
What was in front of you?
My parents.
Now, your father had the contact wound to the back of his head, and you don't remember looking and seeing your brother behind your father?
No, I don't believe he was behind my father.
Were you concerned about maybe hitting your brother by accident?
If he was behind my father, I might have.
Because you were shooting in that direction?
I was just shooting in front of me. If my brother was behind the couch, I would have hit him. I really didn't know what I was firing at. I was just firing right in front of me.
Did you keep your gun in one position, or were you just panning and firing as soon as you could pump that shotgun and pull that trigger?
I don't know.
Did you keep your shotgun stationary and shoot just in one position?
I don't remember. I know I ended up in a different position than when I entered the door, but I don't know what happened with the gun while it was firing.
Besides the contact wound to the back of your father's head, there was a testimony about your father having a wound to his right shoulder, which fractured his arm. Remember that?
No, I don't.
Do you remember that shot taking place that night?
If it happened, it must have happened.
And your father also sustained a wound to his right forearm. Do you remember that shot?
No.
And a wound to his left elbow, which was back to front, from the rear to the front. Do you remember that shot?
No, I don't.
Do you remember the shot to his left thigh? The entrance wound would have been to his inside of his thigh and the exit wound on the outside of his thigh. Do you remember that?
That I remember seeing afterwards.
When did you see that?
When I was picking up the shells or when I went back in the room, I don't remember, but that I remember.
You remember that specifically?
Yeah.
You remember your brother testifying that as he shot at your father fell back into the sofa, into the couch,
No, I don't remember.
into a seated position?
I don't know.
Now, you were in there at the same time firing your guns, correct?
Yes.
Why is it that your brother could see your father fall back into the couch and you couldn't see anything?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustain.
You saw what you were doing that day. You saw you were shooting at your mother, correct?
Apparently not. You're telling me I didn't.
I'm not telling you anything. I'm asking you what you did.
You're telling me that a shot came from my direction at my dad, and it may have. I don't know. I don't know what happened inside the room. I must have shot my mother, and I guess I shot my dad too. I just don't know.
So you could have shot your father.
Yes.
Now, you said that you had 5 shells in your gun, correct?
Yes.
And there were 5 wounds or 6 areas of wounding to your father and 10 to your mother, correct?
Yes.
Now, was there a preconceived plan on which of you would shoot at your mother and which would shoot at your father?
No.
Why is it that you didn't take the first person you saw and have your brother go on to your mother? Why is it that you went off to the left into the room where you would shoot your mother?
Object to affirmative question.
Overruled.
I guess because I got to the door first, I just ran in. We didn't know where exactly my parents were going to be in the room. We thought they were doing something in the room, and I didn't know where they'd be.
Isn't it true that you looked into that room before you entered?
The door was closed.
You cracked that door open to see where your parents were before you entered?
No.
Now, your mother had a wound to her right cheek and nose. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And to her right jaw and her right collarbone, and her teeth were broken out. You remember that?
I remember him saying that.
She also had a wound to her left ear and neck and left shoulder,
I don't remember him saying that.
and to her right arm, which fractured her arm and forearm. You remember that?
No.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to these questions. It's not clear what he's asking him to remember.
All right, are you referring to the coroner's testimony or the events that night?
The events that night.
Well,
All right, then rephrase the question.
Do you remember shooting your mother in the left side of her chest?
No.
Do you remember shooting your mother in her left hip and thigh area?
No.
Mr. Menendez, when you were shooting your mother, did she simply stand in front of you and take all the shots that you were administering to her?
object to the form of the question, Your Honor. There's no proof he shot his mother.
Overruled.
I didn't hear the question.
I asked you, sir, whether your mother simply stood in front of you and took all the shotgun blasts that you were giving to her.
I don't know.
You have no idea what she was doing.
I didn't see her. As soon as I entered the room, I saw her, but as soon as I started firing, I didn't see anyone. I didn't.
How could that be?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
I guess because the room was dark and because there was so much noise and there was so much fire that, and maybe because I don't want to remember. I don't know why, but I don't remember.
Okay, you remember things, I believe you testified, you remember from when you were 3 years old. You've given these juries a lot of the things that happened when you were 3 years old and on later in your life. Remember that?
Calling the question on this case to testimony.
Overruled.
I remember a lot more things. I mean, a lot less things than I remember. A lot more things happened to me in my life than I will ever remember. But what happened that night, when I entered that room, I don't remember.
This is a night that you'll never forget. Isn't that true, sir?
Yes.
And this is a night that you had images of, and you described for Dr. Oziel that you were having nightmares about you and your brother killing your parents, correct?
I had images of it every day.
So why don't you explain to the juries what you saw that night then?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer.
Overruled.
I entered the room. I saw two people in the room and I just started firing. And that's what I remember.
Let's take it step by step though, so the jurors can understand what happened.
It's not a question.
All right, just ask the question rather than the preface.
Mr. Menendez, why don't you try to focus on what you saw that night and describe that to the jury?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer.
Overruled.
At what point that night?
As you entered and you started to shoot, you see your parents in front of the couch. What did you see?
I saw my dad on this side of the coffee table coming forward. I saw my mom on the other side. And then I saw the smoke and the fire of my gun.
Now, let's take one shot at a time then, sir. The initial fire from the gun and the initial smoke didn't cover the whole room, did it?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
When I walked in the room, I was panicking and I just fired every shot I had. I didn't stop to take a look at what I was doing after each shot. I just fired until there was nothing left. And what happened in between when I first started firing, when I ended, is just a red blank to me.
You had never shot that shotgun before, had you?
No.
And you had to pull that trigger and you had to pump that pump shotgun before you fired the second shot, correct?
Yes.
You had to think about what you were doing, didn't you?
No.
You didn't have to think about that, even though you had never shot a shotgun before?
No, I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. It doesn't, I don't know how many times it takes, how long it takes to fire off 5 rounds, but I don't know.
You had never shot a shotgun before, is that right?
No.
This is the first time you had ever shot a shotgun.
Yes.
And you pulled the trigger the first time and it blasted. You heard that blast.
Yes.
Did you see where it went?
No.
Where the shot went?
No.
And then you had to do what? Pump your shotgun?
I suppose I would have had to. I don't remember doing it.
And then do what?
And then I would have had to fire again. And I would have had to keep on doing that until all of the bullets were left, assuming I stopped when the bullets were left. I don't know if I fired more than that. I just don't remember.
Do you know what position your gun was when you first fired it?
I don't know. I assume it was in front of me.
Was it at your hip? Did you have it up at your shoulder? Where did you have it?
I guess I had it at my side. I really don't remember. I don't remember these things.
And your mother was hit also in the left hip and thigh, and the left lower leg, and the left calf. Now,
Objection, is that a question?
All right, let's
Is that-
ask a question, please.
Mr. Menendez, you heard the testimony of the autopsy surgeon that your mother was shot in the left lower leg and the left calf, correct? Correct?
I don't remember that.
At any time, did you realize that your mother had fallen to the floor in front of the couch, between the couch and the coffee table?
No. You need to understand this happened in such a rush, so quickly, that it was over within seconds, 3 seconds. And
Were you timing this, sir?
no, I wasn't. But
How do you know
it just happened so fast. Before I knew it, it was over. I was standing there and it was over. And I don't remember what happened in between.
Sir, are you saying that in 3 seconds, you and your brother could inflict 10 shotgun wounds on your mother and 6 on your father in 3 seconds? Is that what you're saying?
It's what it seemed like to me. Maybe it was 4, maybe it was 2, but it was.
Maybe it was 2 seconds?
It just happened so quickly that I don't have a memory of these individual shots. I just don't. I don't want to have a memory. And I may have had a memory the night after or the night after that. I don't remember having those memories, but I know I was so haunted that I just couldn't deal with the memories. And I don't know.
So it's not that you didn't see what was happening. You just don't want to remember. Is that right? You had stated that it was too dark.
Yes, let's have one question at a time.
Question is then, sir, you saw what was happening and you can remember what was happening, but you don't want to testify here as to what was happening.
No, that's not true. If I remembered, I would have to testify here. But I don't remember. I don't remember ever having the memories. But I know that the memories were so awful that I've forgotten a lot of what happened.
Have you thought about that over the last 4 years, about what happened that night?
Every day.
Have you tried to jog your memory as to what happened when you and your brother entered into that room and surprised your parents? You thought about that?
No.
Overall,
I definitely have not tried to jog my memory. I've tried to forget. I've worked a lot in therapy and taken a lot of medication so I could forget because I don't want to remember. And I definitely have not tried to remember.
Does that therapy and medication make you forget about all the other things that you experienced? Or you have a good memory of everything else?
I really don't have a good memory of everything else. So many things happened to me that I don't remember. But about that night, I don't remember.
The things you've testified to, is that a figment of your imagination then in this trial?
No.
Is that based on things that you would like to have had happen that you could testify to?
I definitely would rather that the things that happened to me had not happened. That's
Well,
for sure.
This therapy, you say, and this medication you're on, that makes you forget about this night that you went in there and shot your parents. What effect does that have on the other things you've testified about?
overall,
The therapy and the medication doesn't make me forget. The medication allows me to deal with it, allows me to talk here today, but the therapy helps me deal with these things. Nothing in therapy wants me to forget things.
Okay, maybe I was mistaken. I thought you testified that the therapy and medication helps you to forget that night. Is that what you testified
If I
to?
said that, I misspoke. That's not what I meant.
So the therapy and medication are not impeding your memory with respect to that night.
No, they're definitely not impeding it. No.
That's something that you just want to do.
I'm sorry.
That's something that you want to do.
What is?
Forget about what happened that night.
Yes, I'd like to completely forget about it.
But we can't do that. We have to have testimony with respect to what you did that night. So can you try to think about what happened that night?
all right, if it is a question, what is your answer?
I know I have to remember, and I don't remember. My attorneys ask me over and over, and I don't remember. I just don't remember what happened when I walked in the room, and there's nothing more that I can tell you.
Do you remember shooting and missing your parents? There were 2 shots that went into the French doors behind your parents. You remember that?
No,
Asked and answered 2 days ago.
Objection overruled.
no, I don't.
Do you have any idea how your mother sustained 10 wounds and your father 6 areas of wounds if you only had 5 cartridges in your shotgun?
No, I don't.
You don't know how that could have happened?
No.
At some point, did you go to where your mother was lying between the sofa and the coffee table
No.
and shoot her there?
No, I didn't.
Do you have any idea how many shotgun shells your brother had in his gun?
No, I do not.
Now take a look would you take a look at the lower right-hand corner, the photograph, I believe it's exhibit 95. It shows a photograph of your father's legs and then your mother is lying down. Okay?
Mhm.
Now there are some wounds on her leg. Isn't that right? And the coroner testified about the wounds on her leg.
Yes.
Now, with respect to the left lower leg, there was a graze wound about 10 inches above the left heel, the coroner testified. And it was a front to back wound, and it was an upward direction. Do you remember?
Question, Your Honor?
Do you remember that testimony?
No, I don't.
Can you explain for these juries how your mother could have gotten a wound on her lower left leg in an upward direction if you were shooting on the other side of the coffee table at her?
I have no idea how she got any of the wounds. I really don't have any idea. There were shots from my brother and from me all over the place, and I have no idea how any of the wounds happened.
Now, when you say there were shots from you and your brother all over the place, did you move around so that the coffee table could not or would not impede your shots?
I remember ending up between the TV and the coffee table, but I guess I was firing from the door to there, but I don't understand your question by move
The
around.
question is, after your mother suffered the initial shotgun blasts and fell to the ground, did you go over and shoot her more while she lay there?
No,
You did not.
I definitely did not do that.
Now, if your father had the wounds that the coroner had testified to, he would not have had any more ammunition to fire at your mother on the ground.
Your
Isn't that
Honor,
right?
This is argument.
It's not the proper question as phrased.
Do you have any
Well, Your
idea?
Honor, I object to this line as calling for an expertise that my client doesn't have.
Objection overruled as to the question has been asked yet.
Mr. Menendez, at any time, did you go closer to your mother so that you'd have a clear shot of her between the coffee table and the sofa?
No,
Was the coffee table always in front of you as you shot at your mother?
yes,
Did you have to shoot over the coffee table?
I assume.
You assume.
Yeah.
After you initially entered into the room and stopped, as you said, in front of the television set, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you just stay right there and continue firing?
I don't know.
You don't know what you did.
I don't know what I was doing when I was firing. I know where I ended up, and that's between the coffee table and the TV. What I did in between, I don't know.
It could be then that you went and you shot your mother as she lay between the coffee table and the sofa. You just don't remember that.
I doubt that could be.
Why is
But
that?
I don't remember that. But you asking me if I ran all the way to the coffee table and then all the way back around the room? That didn't happen.
So you remember exactly what you did.
No,
She misstates the test.
Rephrase the question.
You do remember things that you did then.
no, I don't. I can tell you that I'm sure that I didn't run around the room. I'm sure that I just ran from the door straight in front of the coffee table. But I just don't remember.
you know that you weren't wasting time by running around the room. You went directly to where you could do the most damage. Wouldn't that be fair?
Overall.
No, I wasn't thinking like that. I ran in that room in such a state that I just wanted to fire off that gun as fast as possible. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where I was going to shoot or how I was going to shoot or any of that. This wasn't going through my mind.
Okay, Mr. Menendez, when you went in there, you said all you wanted to do is shoot your gun, correct?
Yes.
You didn't take your gun and fire your 5 shots into the ceiling, did you?
No, I didn't.
You knew you wanted to kill your parents. Isn't that right?
I wanted to shoot at them, yes.
You wanted to what?
I wanted to shoot at them.
And that was your goal as you entered into that room that night.
The last thought I have of entering the room was the fear that one of them was going to be able to take my gun. I assume that was the goal if I ran in there and shoot them, but I don't have a specific memory of the goal. I don't have a specific memory of what I did when I was inside the room. I just don't have it.
Sir, you were inside your house. You got your gun. You were armed. You ran down the stairs. You ran past the family room. You ran out the foyer, outside of your house. You went to your car, correct?
Yes.
You loaded your gun as much as you could,
Yes.
and you were scared that someone was going to take your gun away from you as you entered that door.
Yes, that was the last thought I had. You need to understand who my parents are and how strong they are, especially how quick my dad is. And this was a small room and this was a big gun. And it just flashed through my mind. All kinds of things flashed through my minds. I didn't think about these thoughts. These are just thoughts that flashed through my minds. I didn't think about what my goal was. I was just acting. And from as soon as what happened in the foyer, I panicked and I just burst into that room and I started firing as much as I could, but I can't tell you what happened inside the room.
So when those doors closed to the family room and your father said he was going to finish watching television,
He didn't say that.
you went upstairs and you did all these purposeful movements, all these purposeful actions in order to catch them by surprise.
They thought I was waiting up in my room for my dad to come up and have sex with me. That's what I'm sure they were thinking. And that's what they were about to do. And I just panicked. I
So
thought
you
I
were-
was going to die. And I ran and I loaded as much as I could.
Now, let's try to clarify that. You thought your father was going to come up and have sex with you.
Yes.
You didn't think he was going to come and kill you.
No, I definitely thought he was going to come and kill me. He just
Got it.
wasn't going to do that in front of the family with everyone knowing and my mom knowing right there and my brother knowing right there. That wasn't going to happen.
What wasn't going to happen?
Him just coming up to my room to do that in front of everyone.
So you went out, and when you were outside and you had a loaded gun, you decided, I've got to go back in there, but I'm afraid that they might take my gun away from me as I enter into that room.
That thought went through my mind right before I ran into the room. Not as I was out of the car.
And your brother had a loaded gun right behind you.
Yes.
And it was a fully loaded pump shotgun.
Yes.
And you had your backup with you.
Yes.
Do you remember the testimony of Diane Vandermolen? I believe it was in 1983. Testified that you and your brother tied her up and tried to take her clothes off. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Were you acting in self-defense there too?
No, we were goofing around.
You were acting with. You were acting.
Approach on this issue, Your Honor.
No.
You were acting in concert with your brother then too, weren't you?
Objection for request.
That was some goofing around that I did with my cousin when I was 10 years old.
In 1983, you were 13 years old, weren't you? You were born in
Did you say
1970.
83? All right, then I was 11 years old. But this wasn't something that I was acting in self-defense with, no.
Something you and your brother did together.
Yes.
And he was with you on this night too.
Yes, he was.
And are you saying that there was no discussion whatsoever about which one of you would shoot which parent?
Asked and answered.
We didn't know where my parents were in the room. We thought my parents were coming out. We thought they had guns. We weren't thinking my mom's here, my dad's here. You do this, you do that. That did not even cross my mind.
Mr. Menendez,
Certainly was no discussion about it.
Mr. Menendez, your brother testified, or you testified that your brother had been into the room where they were watching TV. So there was no speculation as to what they were doing in that room, was there? You knew what they were doing in the room.
Rephrase the question, please.
You had testified that your brother was in the family room just minutes before you burst in there with your brother to kill them. And they were watching television, weren't they?
No, they weren't. No, they weren't.
You told these juries that you never, in 4 years, you never asked your brother about that. So how can you testify that they weren't?
My brother and I.
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor, and
Rephrase the question, please.
Sir, didn't you testify that in the past 4 years, you never asked your brother what he saw in that room prior to you and your brother bursting into that room?
My brother and I didn't have discussions about what happened that night. We didn't. I never talked to him really about it. Maybe a week later, I told him I was having trouble dealing with it and so on, but I certainly never had discussions about what was happening inside that room when he walked in, or what happened after we started firing, or anything like that.
Sir,
We just didn't want to talk about that.
Sir, you were out on the streets for 7 months before you were arrested on this case. So you mean to say that you never talked about that in those 7 months that you were on the streets?
argumentative.
We talked about a lot of things, and we talked about the fear we had that weekend, but we definitely didn't talk about what happened inside that room. It's not something that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to forget it. I wanted not to do it because it was coming back to me. At everything that I was doing during the day. It was right there in front of me. I could smell the smoke. I could hear the fire, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
Now, in the 3.5 years that you've been in custody with your brother, you've been in the cell right next door to him for months at a time. Isn't that correct, sir?
No, I was with him, next to him for about 2 months, and ever since then, they've kept us in separate parts of the jail.
Now, you were next to him in 7,000, that module?
No, I was not in the cell next to him.
Which module were you in when you were next to your brother?
In 3100 in 1990.
And you never talked about what happened that night with him during that period of time, did you?
Once we entered the room, never.
And in fact, you and your brother are taken from this courthouse to the men's central jail in a van, correct?
Yes, we are.
And you're the only two inmates on that van.
No, there's 2 deputies sitting right in front of us driving us.
Okay, you ever talk on the bus?
Not if we don't want the deputies to hear us.
Are you seated right next to the deputies?
We're separated on the van. There's a metal sheet in between us. Lyle is separated, put right in front of the deputy, right behind the deputies, directly behind them, and I'm put behind the metal sheet.
Are you saying that over the past 4 years, you never asked him what he saw in that room?
I don't want to know what he saw in that room. I don't want to know. I don't want to deal with it. It's something that I will never forget. It's something that I will always have with me, and I don't want to know. I certainly never asked him.
Now, what you did that night had been planned for some time, hadn't it?
No, it hadn't.
Do you remember seeing a movie about 3 weeks before the killings?
No.
A movie on the Billionaire Boys Club, sir?
No, I never saw that movie.
You know anything about that movie?
Yes, I know a lot about the actual case. I don't know a lot about the movie, but I know a lot about the actual case.
And there was a father.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. May we approach at this point?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, with respect to this BBC movie, you recall that Dr. Oziel testified that you had indicated that you had seen this movie on the BBC.
Back to the form of the question, Dr. Zulu.
Rephrase the question, please.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you had seen this movie on the BBC?
What movie?
Objection overruled.
The Billionaire Boys Club movie.
Dr. O'Deal didn't testify to that.
Do you remember telling him about what you called the BBC movie?
No.
Do you know what the BBC is?
Yeah, he said that I saw a movie on the BBC, and I never said that.
You never told him that.
No, I definitely never told him that.
Did you ever see that movie?
Which movie?
The Billionaire Boys Club movie, sir.
No, I didn't.
Never seen it.
No, I never saw the movie.
Did Dr. Ozio make up some initials like that and say that you told him that you had seen the movie on the BBC?
Which movie are you referring to? A movie that Dr. Ozil says I saw, or this Billionaire Boys Club movie?
You realize that that's the same movie, don't you, sir?
Objection.
No, it isn't.
Overruled.
It isn't. Okay, why don't you tell us what it is?
Dr. Ozil, and I read it very carefully because I wanted to know what he was going to testify in court, said that I saw a movie on the BBC or a movie on the BBC special. And then when I heard you bring up the Billionaire Boys Club movie in court, you were linking them together, but that's not what he was saying.
What were you referring to when you said the BBC movie?
I never said a BBC movie
Well, how do you know what Dr. Ozil was referring to if you don't know what he was talking about, sir?
because he said a movie on the BBC, and clearly he's talking about on the British Broadcasting.
Now, you've used that term yourself, haven't you, sir?
BBC?
Yes.
Yes.
What did you refer to it
Your Honor,
as?
I'm going to object at this point in time.
Overruled.
No, Your Honor, I'd object to the
Overruled.
Sir, what did you refer to it as?
When I was having a conversation with Craig Signorelli,
Your Honor, I'm going to remove the objection.
Overruled.
he said something about BBC, and I said, yeah, like the BBC.
Now, were you talking about the British Broadcasting Company, sir?
When I was talking to Craig, no.
Yes. What were you referring to?
I was referring to the case of the Billionaire Boys Club.
So you knew that BBC stood for the Billionaire Boys Club, correct?
Those are the initials of BBC, yes.
And when you told Dr. Ozil that you had seen a movie on the BBC, you knew exactly what you were talking about. You knew it was a Billionaire Boys Club. Isn't that correct, sir?
I never told Dr. Ozil that.
Why is it that you think now, if you never told him that, why is it that you think he was not referring to the Billionaire Boys Club, sir?
Because if he says that I told him about this movie that you're referring to, I wouldn't have called it the BBC. I would have said the name of the movie. That's not what he said. He said that I said a movie on the BBC.
When Craig Signorelli mentioned the BBC, did you say,
Your Honor,
no, Craig, I'm talking about the British Broadcasting Company? Is that what you said?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again on this subject matter with regard to conversation with Mr. Signorelli.
Objection overruled.
Sir,
Yes, you've got me confused. Which conversation are you
when
now
Mr.
referring to?
Signorelli mentioned the BBC, you knew exactly what he was talking about,
What
correct?
date is it that?
This is
that conversation
November
occurred?
29th, 1989.
Yes, I knew what he was talking about.
And you didn't correct him and say, no, that's the Billionaire Boys Club. You knew exactly what he was talking about,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
And you were thinking about forming your own corporation at that time, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again.
Sustained.
Did you at any time during your sessions with Dr. Ozil ever mention this movie on the BBC?
Objection, Your Honor. 1016.
Right, rephrase the question, please.
With respect to those sessions on October 31st, 1989 and November 2nd, 1989, did you ever mention seeing the BBC movie and talking to Dr. Ozil about how the father in that movie reminded you of yours?
No,
You never mentioned that at all.
I never said that to him.
Was there ever any conversation when your brother was present at either of those two sessions that we've just related where that was discussed?
It could not have been discussed when Lyle was there. It certainly wouldn't have been discussed there because in that conversation, we were specifically not talking about things that happened before.
Sir, would it be fair to say then that you had disclosed a lot of things to Dr. Ozil before your brother shut you up?
Yeah, I talked about a lot about what happened in terms of where we bought the guns and what happened after my parents died and so on.
And you also had a discussion with him about your brother and you planning the killings, correct? Before your brother got there.
No, that's not true.
Now, you indicated that after your brother arrived, you understood him to be quite upset with you. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, he was.
Now, you heard your brother testify that you and he had conversations about your mother and father deciding between themselves and among themselves that they would be the ones to kill you and your brother because it would be less of a risk, because they would be the ones to actually do the killing. Remember that?
Yeah, I think that question is
Well, do you understand the question?
No, I don't know. what you're
Let's
saying.
rephrase it, please.
Do you remember your brother testifying that he and you discussed whether your mother and father would kill themselves or get somebody to kill for them? Remember that?
Would kill themselves?
Would kill you to themselves or hire somebody else.
When are you asking that we had this conversation?
Did you have that conversation?
I think at one point during that week, maybe Thursday or something, we may have had some sort of conversation like that, but I don't remember.
Isn't
I
it
certainly
true?
didn't think that someone else was going to hire, they were going to hire someone else to kill us until my mom mentioned that the fishing boat trip had changed, and then I thought it was a possibility.
Isn't it true that the two of you discussed how it would be a lot safer for the two of you to kill your parents so that no one else would know? You would only have to rely on the two of you. You could hold the secret. Did you ever discuss that?
No. I'm not clear what you're saying.
Well, let's go a step further. When you went to Dr. Oziel on October 31st, 1989, and you disclosed what you and your brother had done as far as planning out the killings and watching the BBC movie, when your brother arrived, he realized that now it wasn't the perfect murder. Now somebody else knew. And the risk was only between you two.
objection, Your Honor, comes down to argumentative cause for speculation.
Rephrase the question.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mr. Menendez, did you discuss doing the killing yourselves, you and your brother?
No.
Never discussed that?
No. You mean before my parents died, Lyle and I had a discussion that we're going to kill our parents ourselves?
Yes.
No, that never happened.
Was there any discussion about it would be safe because it would only be the two of you? You wouldn't have to rely on somebody else who might tell the police what you did?
You mean hire somebody else?
Yes.
No, we certainly never had any conversations like that.
So it was always the plan that you two would do the killings?
No.
Now, when you went into Dr. Oziel's office on the 31st of October, and as you indicated, you were depressed and you felt bad about what you had done, and you had spent about an hour and a half with him, and you told him what you did, you told him how it was all planned out. Then when your brother got there, he was upset, wasn't he?
Objection, Your Honor, compound.
Overall.
I didn't go to Dr. Oziel to tell him. I went to Dr. Oziel because I was ready to kill myself, and because my cousin Henry said, I don't feel comfortable with you feeling like this. I want you to get some therapy or some help. That's why I went to Dr. Oziel. When he wasn't understanding why I wanted to kill myself and why I had so much grief over my parents dying, that's when I realized I had to tell him. But there certainly was never a conversation with him about the BBC movie that you're referring to or planning. And that's when Lyle got to the session, he had no idea what I told Dr. Oziel anyway.
Now, Mr. Menendez, before your brother got there, you had been with Dr. Oziel for about an hour and a half, correct?
No, I think I'd been with Dr. Oziel for close to 2.5 hours or something like that.
So you had plenty of time to explain what you and your brother had done.
We didn't get to that until after he called Lyle and told him to come over. Before that, the 2 hours were basically talking about my feelings before I ever told him that we killed our parents.
Now, your brother was upset with you for having told Dr. Oziel what you and he had done, correct?
Yes.
He was upset.
Yeah, he was definitely upset. He was frightened that Dr. Oziel would go to the police. He was upset.
At that point, did you realize that you had done something wrong you shouldn't have told Dr. Oziel?
I realized that before he got there, when Dr. Oziel didn't care about why I was there and why I was depressed, and just was basically asking me the details. And as soon as he started asking me why, right after he called Lyle, I started thinking to myself, I had made a mistake because Lyle's not going to be happy with me, and I shouldn't have told Dr. Oziel this. And I thought that before Lyle got there, though.
And now Dr. Oziel knew what you and your brother had done.
Yes.
And you told these juries that you always wanted to get caught. The 7 months that you were out free on the streets, you wanted to get caught. Yet when you told Dr. Oziel you were afraid that he was going to go to the police so that you would get caught, and you didn't want that to happen, did you?
No,
Overall.
I never said that I wanted to get caught. I definitely always thought I would get caught, and a part of me wanted to get punished for this. I no longer had my parents to put me in my room and hit me. I no longer had them to do things to me that they had done all my life. And I felt guilty that they weren't able to do this. I definitely felt like that, but I definitely didn't want to go to jail. That wasn't something that I had looked forward to or had wanted to do.
When your brother got to the session with Dr. Oziel, he was very upset with you, wasn't he?
Yes.
And you didn't tell him exactly what you had told Dr. Oziel because you didn't want him to get mad at you. Isn't that correct?
No, Dr. Oziel was going to tell Lyle what I had told him, but Lyle cut him off and said that he didn't want to know.
So since Dr. Oziel didn't tell your brother what you had told him, Dr. Oziel, you weren't going to tell him what you told him. You were just going to say, I told him we did it, but I didn't tell him any of the details because you didn't want him mad at you, did you?
No, I actually, later that night at my house, he had asked me what I told Dr. Oziel, and I basically told him what I told Dr. Oziel.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, I was crying at the time, and I was just spurting out what I said to Dr. Oziel in a rush.
So that night, you recounted 2.5 hours that you had spent with Dr. Oziel, and you told your brother, even though he was mad that you went to Dr. Oziel in the first place, you told him every single thing that you told Dr. Oziel earlier that day. Is that right?
No, I'm talking about just that we had killed my parents and the details of exactly what we did afterwards and so on is what I told Lyle. I didn't tell him, I guess, everything. I don't remember exactly what I told him, but the first 2.5 hours were just about me and my suicide and so on. I just told Lyle that, I guess, in a sentence. I don't remember.
You didn't explain to your brother what you had told Dr. Oziel. That'd be fair to say?
Which part of what I told Dr. Oziel are you asking that I explained to Lyle? I certainly explained to Lyle some of the things I told Dr. Oziel, yes.
Okay, you explained some of the things, but you didn't tell him the detail in which you told Dr. Oziel about what you had done, what you and your brother had done.
I didn't give Dr. Oziel an enormous amount of detail.
Mr. Menendez,
I gave him very little.
how is it that Dr. Oziel had all these specific things that you had done, which have been corroborated and verified here, if you had not told him what you had done?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustain. Let's take a recess and then we'll resume at 11 o'clock. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 11.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, drawing your attention to the October 31st, 1989 meeting or session that you had with Dr. Oziel. Is it your testimony that you never mentioned a BBC television show?
Yes.
But you indicated you are familiar with the BBC television show.
I'm aware of his existence. It's a miniseries, I believe.
And you knew about its existence before October 31st of 1989. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
And the Billionaire Boys Club movie involved the son being involved in killing the father. Is that right?
It's about the real case. And yeah, it's about the real case.
Do you remember watching that with your brother?
No, I never watched that with my brother.
you remember where you were on July 31st, 1989?
I believe I was at Saddlebrook Country Club in Florida.
Is that in Tampa, Florida?
Yeah, I was down there in a training camp, both at my Aunt Marta's and there.
In fact, your brother was there also on that day, wasn't he?
I'm not sure if he was there at that time or
Attorneys, the jurors are not present. Counsel have indicated you want to discuss something?
Very briefly, Your Honor, clear on the purpose, but Mr. Cuneo has indicated he put 4 crime scene photographs up on the bulletin board. And I take it to cross-examine.
we talked about the fear we had that weekend, but we definitely didn't talk about what happened inside that room. It's not something that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to forget it. I wanted not to do it because it was coming back to me. At everything that I was doing during the day, it was right there in front of me. I could smell the smoke. I could hear the fire, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
Now, in the 3.5 years that you've been in custody with,
Off the tennis, although he hadn't decided if he was cutting off the tennis, but that he wanted me now to go more into law and business schools and go on into business with him and so on.
and as you testified in direct examination, your father really controlled your life.
Yes,
Correct.
completely.
And he was going to decide what you would do as far as your career,
Yes, he would.
where you would live
Yes,
afterwards, this compound on an island in Florida.
yes,
And he would probably, as your brother testified, he would tell your brother who he could marry.
yes,
Objection, Your Honor, call security.
And was really in on everything, every aspect of your lives, correct?
yes,
And you told Dr. Oziel that he was too controlling, and that after watching the movie about this young man being involved in killing his own father, his wealthy father, you discussed it with your brother that you and he would get rid of your father.
No, it was actually Dr. Oziel telling me this in that session. He was telling me what he knew about Dad. He didn't know so much about Mom, but he thought he knew a lot. And he was talking about, after I said I didn't know why, what he felt. He understood what I was saying.
Mr. Menendez, are you saying here that you simply went in and said, Lyle and I shotgunned our parents to death, but I don't know why, in stop at that?
No, that's not at all what happened.
You testified just before we broke that you told Dr. Oziel in detail everything that happened after the killings, correct?
Objection, this states the testimony.
Overall.
Is that what you testified to?
I testified to something like that, not exactly those words.
That you told him exactly what happened after the killings, but you never mentioned what happened before the killings.
No, I mentioned that we bought shotguns in San Diego. Once he asked me, I told him that we ran into the room, and he asked me, where did we get the shotguns and why haven't the police found out? And I said that I thought they would have already because of my brother's friend's ID. But that's not why I went to the session. I didn't go to the session to tell him that I killed my parents and then not to tell him why. That's not at all what happened.
Once you went to the session and started to confess that you and your brother had committed the killings, then you started to discuss what happened before the killings. Isn't that right?
No. At that point, he asked me who knew, what did the police know, what did people know about my brothers and my involvement and what evidence there were and that sort of thing. And then he got on the phone and he called Lyle.
I remember that you told Dr. Oziel that once the two of you began and you saw this plot to this BBC special that mirrored what you intended to do to your father, you simply included the plans in those plans to kill your mother because your mother would have been depressed and suicidal. And if you killed your father, she would be a potential witness. Do you remember telling Dr. Oziel that?
No, I didn't. I knew what the case of the Billionaire Boys Club was about, and the father suffocated in a trunk. It had nothing to do with what we wanted to do, and certainly this stuff about you said something about my mother being a witness, or we couldn't kill my father without that. Or, I'm not. Could you repeat it again?
Yes, I believe you, Dr. Oziel, indicated that you had told him about this BBC special about the son being involved in killing his wealthy father, that once you saw that, you and your brother started to discuss how your father was similar to the father as depicted in that movie, and that you discussed how to get rid of your own father. Isn't that right?
Is that what he says I said? Is that what you're asking?
Right. Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I said. I also think he said I mirrored the movie. Is that what he said? I'm really unclear. If you could show me exactly what he said, I could just go down the list and tell you what I didn't say and what actually happened.
Do you remember talking to Dr. Oziel about your motivation for killing your parents?
Yeah.
And part of that motivation was to get rid of the controlling, dominating force in your life, your father, correct?
Yeah, that's what he was saying that I didn't understand. He was telling me, once I said I didn't know, and he asked me, well, when did you guys when did the idea first come up or something like that? He was telling me that I didn't understand. He was telling me that I wasn't very bright and that it was so confusing an issue because it had to do with all these psychological ramifications that this is why it happened, and that through therapy and hypnosis, I'll begin to understand.
Mr. Menendez, did he tell you that you saw the Billionaire Boys Club movie? That's why you did it?
No,
tell you
that
that?
was never discussed in the session.
So when the discussion occurred about the Billionaire Boys Club movie, you knew about that movie before you ever talked to Dr. Oziel, correct?
Objection, this states the testimony.
Rephrase the question, please.
Had you known about the Billionaire Boys Club movie before you ever talked to Dr. Oziel on October 31st, 1989?
Yes, I did.
And so when he said that you spoke about the movie, he wasn't making that up, was he?
Objection, Dr. Oziel never spoke about that.
Objection overruled.
Dr. Oziel never testified that I saw the Billionaire Boys Club. And I don't think that he I'm really confusing the issues. That was never talked about in this session. Any movie was not brought up in this session.
Mr. Menendez, you heard Dr. Oziel testify that you had discussed seeing a movie on the BBC.
Yes.
And now you're acting as though you don't have any idea what that means. Is that right?
Objection, argumentative.
Rephrase the question.
Mr. Mr. Menendez, are you telling these juries that you have no idea what the BBC movie referred to?
Objection, Your Honor, that's also argument, that calls for
Overruled.
speculation.
Any
Uh,
answer?
BBC stands for a lot of things. One possibility is certainly the Billionaire Boys Club, but I don't believe that's what Dr. Oziel testified to, is all that I'm saying.
Was there some other movie that aired a couple weeks before the killings that had to do with the son killing his father other than the Billionaire Boys Club movie, sir?
All that I'm saying, sir, is that Dr. Oziel did not testify that I saw the BBC movie. He testified that I saw a movie on the BBC or a BBC special. This BBC movie that you're referring to is also a miniseries. It's not a movie. And that's all that I'm trying to tell you,
How do you know that?
because I know about the movie. I was friends with a kid whose brother was involved in it. And he used to talk about how his brother was innocent. And this was a frame up of some other thing. And I knew about the case.
You knew one of the sons of the father who was killed in the Billionaire Boys Club movie, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point.
Overruled. Yes, we'll stop.
So with all this information and knowledge that you had about this movie, are you still saying that you didn't know what Dr. Oziel referred to when he testified about the movie on the BBC, sir?
All that I'm,
That calls for speculation. And is irrelevant.
Rephrase the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you've testified that you knew this movie was a miniseries. You knew one of the sons of the father that was actually killed by the BBC. And are you telling these jurors that you don't know what Dr. Oziel was referring to when he said that you spoke of watching this movie on the BBC?
Your Honor,
The
it calls for mind reading about
Overruled.
Oziel.
Objection overruled.
the first time that I ever thought that Dr. Oziel might be referring to this movie was when you brought it up here in court, that Dr. Oziel was referring to the Billionaire Boys Club. And you said it was a miniseries on the Billionaire Boys Club. I knew about the case from 1986 when I had watched a 60-minute program with my father. I mean, I knew about the case for years. I certainly didn't need to watch a movie to know about the case.
So that gave you the idea,
Watching a 60-minute program with my dad?
right?
No.
Now, what were you talking about when you said that you saw this plot, this movie on the BBC, that you and your brother discussed? The father depicted in that movie reminded you of your own father.
I never said that. The father in the movie was, I assume you're talking about Bryant's father, and he was nothing like my father.
He was,
But I mean, I don't know what the movie portrayed the father to be, is what I'm saying. But Brian told me a lot about his own father.
now you knew his father was a millionaire.
His father was a,
You can object to this, calls for hearsay.
Sustain.
What is your understanding about the father, since you know about him?
All right, let's move on to something else.
After you and your brother planned out the killing of your mother and father and burst into the room and did the shooting that you say you can't recall today, you and your brother emptied the shotguns, and I believe you said that after you finished firing every round in your gun, you ran out to your car, correct?
Objection, on question is content.
Overruled.
Is that right so far?
no, you're not right so far.
Why don't you tell us what happened?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for a narrative answer.
Sustain.
After you finished emptying your shotgun, your pump shotgun, into your mother and father, what did you do?
Object to the question, it assumes facts not inevitable.
Overruled.
All right, you're saying after we killed our parents, what exactly did we do?
Yes.
We went out to the foyer, and eventually Lyle came over to me and sat down next to me.
After you finished emptying your guns, what did you do?
Lyle and I went out to the foyer, and he sat down next to me.
Isn't it true, sir, that you went out to your car and you helped your brother reload.
Oh, I thought you were talking about after that. Yes, that happened first. And then Lau ran back in the room, and I went to the stairs, and I sat down there.
Now, are you sure that you handed your brother only one shotgun cartridge?
Your Honor, this was asked of Dan.
Overruled.
Your Honor, may we approach?
No.
Let me answer, sir.
Yes, I'm fairly sure.
When you say fairly sure, could it have been more?
I don't believe so.
So it's your understanding there was only one.
Yes.
You heard your brother testify that he went back into the room and reached over the coffee table and shot your mother in the cheek, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, that misstates the testimony of the officer.
Overruled.
Is that what Lau testified to?
Do you recall that?
No.
Did he tell you what he did?
No, he'd never told me what he did.
You heard the last shot.
Yes.
You saw him come out.
Yes.
He didn't say, I finished her off.
Certainly not.
Did he say something to you after that?
He said nothing. He just sat down in the archway of the living room, went out across from me on the stairs.
And you were on the stairs.
Yes.
And then you had a conversation with him.
Within a few minutes, he came over because I was shaking, and he said it's going to be all right.
He said, it'll be all right. Let's just go back and pick up all the shotgun shells, and let's do as we had planned. Let's go to the Taste of LA.
No. At that point, I said that I didn't. Maybe the police weren't coming, and I didn't want to talk to the police, and maybe they weren't coming, and some words were exchanged about maybe I was right, maybe they weren't coming, and that's when Lyle went to get his gun, and I think he was walking out at the foyer when we went to pick up the shells.
Your brother was walking out of the house, and then you decided to pick up the shells?
He was walking out at the foyer, and it was at that moment after he had retrieved his gun that the idea about picking up the shells came up.
Isn't it true that you had planned to pick up the evidence beforehand?
No, it was definitely not planned to pick up the shells. Looking back, I realized that I was just in a strange state, and that there was no reason to pick up the shells, but it was just something that we thought of doing right after.
You were so confused and in a strange state that you were thinking purposefully that we have to pick up the shells so there will be no evidence in that room. And you did that, didn't you? You were thinking clear enough to think, we better get those shells because they might have our fingerprints on them.
I don't.
Objection, compound.
Sustained. Rephrase the question, please.
Mr. Menendez, were you thinking that you should pick up those shotgun shells because they might have your fingerprints on them?
Yeah, that's what was in my mind. I don't know how clear I was thinking or how clear you have to think to do that, but it just went into my mind, and without even thinking about whether it was important or not, we just did it.
Well, you made a conscious effort to pick up those shells. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we made an effort to pick up the shells.
You were thinking clear enough to think we have to pick those shells up because they have our fingerprints on them, weren't you?
I don't know how to answer that question. Yeah, I guess, yes. I wasn't thinking very clearly. I was shaking at the time, and I didn't think we picked up all the shells. I was surprised to read in the paper that we had, but that was what we did.
In fact, when you discussed it with your brother that you better pick up the shells because they had prints on them, you went back into the room and you looked for every shell you could find and you picked up every shell you could see, correct?
It wasn't a discussion. I'm not sure which one of us said it. He believes that he said it. I may have been the one that said it. I don't remember. It was just something that someone said, so we just did. We weren't discussing things and then doing them. An idea came up and we just did it. At that point, we thought maybe we can get out of here and maybe we won't go to jail. And so we were just doing things that night on the spur of the moment.
Now, isn't
But
it
certainly
true?
picking up the shells was not a discussion like that.
Isn't it true, sir, that you had a plan that the gunshots would go off, that would establish the time of the killings, and that you had an alibi for that time. Isn't that correct? You said that you were going to say that you were at the movies, that you would go to see License to Kill, but it was packed. You couldn't get in, so you would go to see Batman. Wasn't that part of the alibi here?
Are you saying before? That was what we tried to do afterwards, and it didn't work out. But because they wouldn't sell us tickets.
Sir, isn't it true that your brother had discussed with Perry Berman that he and you would go to the movies? So he had told one of his friends that they would be at the you would be at the movies prior to going to the Taste of LA, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay and speculation.
Well, it's also a compound question if you want to break it down into this, what we do.
Did you know, sir, that you and your brother had planned to go to the movies at 8 o'clock that night?
I didn't know that. Apparently, Lyle had plans to meet someone at the movies that we didn't show up for, but I wasn't aware of that.
You had no idea that you were going to go to the movies that night?
Lyle mentioned that he wanted me to be back. When I went back to the house, either between 12 and 1, he mentioned that he wanted me back at a certain time because he said we might go to the movies or I might do something. I don't really remember what he said. I learned afterwards that he actually was supposed to meet someone inside the movies that he was hoping the police wouldn't find out about. But apparently that didn't work out either.
The first time you ever found out about the movies was when?
I believe it was when I went back to the house between 12 and 1. I'm not specific about it though.
So you found out that you were going to go to the movies between 12 and 1 when you returned to the house on Sunday.
Yes, I believe
And your
so.
brother had told you to come back by 8 o'clock so that you could make the movie. Is that right?
I believe that's what he said. I'm not certain it was for the movie, but I know he told me to get back at that time. So I'm really just speculating.
You're aware that then you were covered for that period of time as to your whereabouts.
We weren't covered. That's what I'm trying to explain to you, that
Let me ask you
we
this,
weren't
sir.
covered because a friend of mine was actually inside the movie that we were supposed to meet, and we didn't show up. It was certainly no plan before.
You had both seen Batman before, correct?
Yes.
And you had both seen License to Kill before?
I don't know if Lyle had, but I had.
So if you had said that you were at Batman and someone asked you about Batman, you would be able to describe what occurred during that movie, correct?
Yes, I would have been able to say what the movie was about. I saw it.
And after this Batman movie, there was this plan to go to the Santa Monica Civic Center to go to the Taste of LA, correct?
No,
There was not that plan.
no.
You knew nothing about that plan.
To go to meet Perry at the Civic Center?
Yes.
Yes, but when you refer to plan, are you referring to plan to kill my parents? That didn't happen. My brother, I'm not sure when I had the idea of going to the Taste of LA. I know I had it when we asked my parents to go out that night, that we were going to go over and meet Perry at the Taste of LA. But you're confusing me here.
Sir, I thought you said that you told your parents you were going to go to a movie, but you had no plans to go to a movie.
Exactly.
That you were really going to go to the Taste of LA.
Exactly.
And now you're saying you didn't know you're going to go to the Taste of LA?
No, I knew at that point we were going to go to the Taste of LA. We just wanted to be out of the house. We could have gone to the valley for all I cared. We just wanted to be out of the house. And since Perry was at the Taste of LA, we were planning on going over there.
Now, this time period would have accounted for your whereabouts during the time that your parents were killed, correct?
Objection, Dave, Your Honor, as to which time period?
Rephrase the question, please.
Sir, there was a plan for you and your brother to say you were at the movies, correct?
Afterwards, when we talked to the police,
Yes.
yes.
And that day, was there a plan to call your brother's friend to tell him you would be at the movies that day? Was there a plan?
I don't understand that question. To call my brother's friend to tell him we'd be at the movies, we didn't show up. All the police had to do was go and talk to him.
Your friend, or your brother's friend, Perry Berman, spoke to your brother that day, didn't he?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay beyond his personal knowledge.
Section overruled.
I thought you were referring to the other friend,
I-
Perry Berman.
Let's talk about Perry Berman for
Okay.
a minute here. Did your brother tell you that he had a discussion with Perry Berman and he told Perry Berman that you and he were going to the movies that night, and after the movies, you would meet him, Perry Berman, at the Taste of LA?
I don't remember if he told me that. I know he testified that that's the conversation he had with Perry, but I don't know if I was aware of that at the time.
When did you become aware of that?
I know I was aware of that when I got back to the house and he told me about the conversation he had with Perry that day. And he said,
Was that at 12 o'clock?
no, that was at 9:30.
9:30 at night.
Yes.
You had a discussion with him about the alibi at that time?
No, he told me what he had talked about with my dad during the day. He talked about the armitage camp and that he was scared of my dad's reaction about it. He talked to me about the conversation he had with Perry. And I guess at that point, he had made plans to meet Perry that night. I'm not clear on it, though.
Now, you actually went after the killings, after you picked up the shells. Actually, when you were picking up the shells, did you testify that you turned on the lights at that point?
Yeah, the lights were a dimmer. So I guess you turned the lights all the way up.
They were low before.
I think they were off.
And you then turned them on.
Yes, one of us turned us on.
Okay, when you say you think they were off, could they have been a dim light?
Dimmed all the way off. But once it's all the way off, it clicks.
Right.
So but right before it clicks, the lights are all the way off.
So you don't remember it clicking then?
Well, I'm not the one that turned off the lights.
Well, you turned them on?
I don't know if I did or my brother did. I don't remember. But one of us did because the lights were on when we were picking up the shells.
When the light goes off on a dimmer, it clicks, and when it goes on, it clicks, correct?
I believe so.
And
Judge Stern actually misstates electricity.
All right, counsel, let's just confine ourselves to the legal objection.
All right, close this speculation.
Objection overruled.
do you remember that, sir?
Remember what?
Well, you were testifying about the dimmer, and
Yes.
you just turn it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that either Lyle or I turned the lights all the way on, and it's a dimmer light. So we turned it all the way on to pick up the shells.
So there was full light on.
Yes.
And you saw the crime scene,
Yes.
and you saw your mother laying on the ground.
I was actually trying not to look. I know she was there, but I didn't. I just wanted to. Luckily, the shells weren't in that direction. Luckily, the shells were against the wall, under the table, and around the hallway area.
Did you see your brother go behind the sofa to recover any shell casings,
No.
shells? You did not see him do that?
No.
Were you watching what he was doing, or were you just picking up the shells that you were interested in picking up?
I was just picking up the shells that I saw. I really wasn't watching what he was doing.
Did you have to get on your hands and knees and crawl around to pick up the shell casings?
I know one of the shells was underneath the table, the 8-side table in the back. I got that, but I don't believe I had to get on my hands and knees and crawl around.
How many did you recover?
I have no idea.
Do you know how many your brother recovered?
No.
With the emptied shells, what did you do with those shells?
We put them in the car and eventually threw them out either that night or the next morning.
Well, what did you do with them when you picked them up?
We brought them to the car.
Did you put them in your pocket first or what?
I don't remember. We may have. I don't remember.
Now, there was blood spattered on you, correct?
There were teeny red dots on my jeans.
On your jeans?
Yes.
Where else?
That's all that I saw.
What color shirt were you wearing that day?
I don't remember.
Did you have a t-shirt on, or did you have a sweater on, a jacket?
I don't remember. I don't think I had a sweater, but I don't remember what I was wearing.
Now, you saw these teeny red dots on your jeans.
Yes.
They're very obvious.
No. I saw them when I was. I guess I saw them when I was in the car. I don't really remember when I saw them, but I know that I had them on my jeans.
And did you see your brother with blood spatters on him?
No, I didn't see anything on him.
And he shot your father in the back of the head at close range, didn't he?
Apparently.
The coroner testified it was a contact wound.
Apparently.
And he also went up to your mother and shot her in the face. It was a contact wound.
Apparently.
And you saw no blood spatters on him at all?
I know he didn't change his clothes.
Now, after you gathered up these shells, what happened?
We left.
You simply say, okay, we have them all. Let's get out of here.
We didn't believe we had them all because we figured that the shells were all over the place and I wasn't going near my parents at that point. I just wanted to get out of there.
Let me
at
ask
that-
you this.
Excuse me, could the witness be permitted to
Yes.
finish his answer?
Are you done?
Finished?
I don't even remember what I was saying. I don't remember.
Okay, your next question, please.
Sir, you indicated that you were generally between the coffee table and the television set, and that's where you did your firing from,
Your Honor, this has been asked and answered.
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Now, why is it then that there were some shell casings that you thought were by your parents?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Because I had no idea where the shells were. Shells just apparently fly out of a shotgun. I don't know. I had no concern about where they were going or what was happening. I didn't know where they were. I thought they could be anywhere.
You saw a number of shotgun shells over to your right. Is that correct? As you were shooting, after you finished shooting, did you see the shotgun shells had been ejected to the right?
I didn't see that after I finished shooting. When I went to pick up the shells, I noticed that most of them were, you know, the diagram, most of them were around the door area.
But you felt that you did not pick up all of the shell casings because you thought some were by your parents, correct?
I couldn't imagine that I picked them all up because I figured they would have gone all over the room, and I wasn't going all over the room. I thought maybe some were under the couch or different places, but I wasn't going to check.
How would they have gotten under the couch?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
What I'm saying is I don't know. I don't know where they went, and I just picked them up, the ones that I saw. I didn't care about any of the rest.
How many did you pick up?
I don't remember.
You have any idea?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
I really don't. I apparently picked up what my brother didn't.
You remember picking up more than 5?
No.
Less than 5?
No. I don't
You have
remember.
no
what-
idea.
I have no idea.
Once you picked up these shells, did you look at your brother to see whether he had completed his task of picking up the remaining shells?
I don't remember that. I just remember leaving.
So as soon as you finished picking up the shells that you had seen, you left the room
Yes.
and you were in a hurry.
At that point, I wanted to get out of the house.
Okay. At that point, you wanted to get rid of the evidence.
Yes.
Okay, so what did you do?
We got in the car and left the driveway, and I believe we made a right. I'm not exactly sure.
Who was driving?
My brother was.
When you arrived at the car, were you the first one to the car?
I don't remember.
Do you remember opening the trunk or the door to put your gun in?
I believe the trunk was already open, but I really don't know.
You don't remember.
I know I did, but I don't remember how I did.
You put your gun in the car
Yes.
and you're holding on to the shells.
Yes.
They're in your hand.
I just don't remember whether I had them in my pocket, in my hand, under my shoulder. I don't remember.
At some point, you saw your brother in the car. Did he look like he was in a hurry too?
We wanted to get out of there.
Was there a discussion there?
I don't remember a discussion there. I know that there was some talk when we were driving away on a different street, but at the house, I don't remember.
Now, at the house, when you were picking up these shells, was there any discussion there?
I don't remember.
Don't remember at all.
No, I don't remember any discussion.
Was there ever any discussion once the lights went on that let's make sure mom and dad are dead?
Definitely not.
You didn't hear any moaning at that point, did you?
I didn't hear anything at that point.
No sounds?
None.
The moaning occurred before you ran out to get the extra cartridge to give to your brother, correct?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that your brother told you that your mother was trying to crawl.
When he didn't tell me that night.
He told you that sometime later.
Yes.
When was that?
At some point, sometime later. Sometime. I don't know what time later. At some point, he did.
Was it a day later?
Like I said before, I think we had a discussion or a talk when I first told him that I didn't want to live anymore, about some of the things that happened, but I don't know if we talked about that then or when. I just don't remember when.
You did talk about that before you talked to Dr. Oziel,
Yes.
so you knew about that before then, before
Yes.
October 31st,
Mm-hmm.
1989. But yes?
Yes.
But there was no discussion, as you recall, inside of the house as the lights were turned on. Your parents were lying there. Your father was seated and your mother was lying there. No discussion at all.
There was talk before on the stairs, but once we had gone in to pick up the shells, I don't remember any discussion.
And then without any discussion, you left, you went to the car, and then your brother arrived there and you put the guns in the car, and there was no discussion there either?
I don't remember. I know we got out of there in a hurry after that.
Okay, so you were in a hurry, and your brother got into the car, started up the car, and took off.
Yes.
And where did you go?
Like I said, I believe we made a right. At some point, we headed toward the theaters.
That's in Century City?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you describe what you did
What I did when?
during that period of time?
You're not going to object.
Let's be more specific.
Okay.
Mr. Creon.
You and your brother had gotten into your car.
Yes.
You had the guns that you killed your parents with in the car. You had the shells that had your fingerprints with you from the family room, and you started to drive away.
And I'm going to object to form the question as assumes facts and remedy.
Overall.
I don't know that the fingerprints had my that the shells had my fingerprints on it.
That was your concern, though, correct?
It was a guess. That's why we picked him up. Yes.
Okay. You have testified that your brother was driving the car.
Yeah, he always drove.
Did you discuss with him that you now had to go to the Century City, Century 14 theaters?
I know one of us said where we're going to go, where we're going to say we were, this and that, and it may have been me that just said head over to the movies. I'm really not sure.
Okay. Now
It was-
there was already a plan to go to the movies. Isn't that right?
No, there wasn't.
Your brother had spoken to Perry Berman earlier that day and had said that you were going to the movies, sir. Isn't that right?
Objection, I call for your
Rephrase the question.
Did you have any knowledge that your brother had discussed with his friend Perry Berman that you and he would go to the movies that night?
Apparently, he was meeting a friend, Carrie Parker, at the movies, but I didn't know that. I didn't know about Carrie Parker till afterwards.
So when you got into the car and you suggested, let's go to the movies, you just were lucky.
objection, Your Honor. Question's been evaded.
Objection sustained to the form of the question. Why don't you ask a different question, please?
Was it luck that you happened to guess that the movies would be the place that your brother had told Perry Berman that you were going?
No, it wasn't lucky. It was luck that the police didn't talk to Carrie Parker, but it wasn't luck that we headed toward the movies. We had at some point said, go to the movies. I don't remember if it was Lyle or me. It may have been Lyle thinking that Carrie was there. I don't remember is what I'm saying, but at some point we did head toward the movies.
So you had no idea that your brother Lyle had set up this alibi about being at the movies with Perry Berman. You had no knowledge of that. Is that right?
I don't think he set up an alibi with Perry Berman to be at the movies.
Oh, the alibi was with the Taste of LA then.
No, he told Perry, my understanding of what he testified, that he was meeting a friend at the movies.
You don't recall him testifying that he was going to go with you to the movies?
I guess so. That's why he told me to be home earlier.
Now, at some point, you started to head to the Century 14 theaters, correct?
Yes.
Did you have to give your brother directions?
No.
He knew where that was.
Yes.
And what happened when you arrived at the complex?
We parked on one of the side streets. It may have been in front of the theater. I don't really remember. And we just ran over to the ticket counter to get a ticket for the movie.
Now, your brother had testified that you had parked on a side street and there was metered parking there, correct?
I don't remember meter parking, but if he does, I don't remember it.
You remember parking right in front of the complex?
No, I'm not sure. I think it was in front. It may have been on the side. I don't remember.
Which street would that have been on?
I have no idea.
Where did you have to go from this metered parking to where the theater was?
Up the, there's a stairs that go up to a level where the theater is right in front of it. I believe the stairs are right in front of some valet parking area or something like that. I'm not sure.
So you didn't have to go very far.
I don't think so.
Do you remember your brother putting any money into the meter?
I don't remember a meter.
Do you remember your brother testifying that you parked at the metered parking?
Ask and answer.
He said something like that. I don't remember it. I don't believe he said he put money in the meter because we didn't wait around for things like that.
But you've forgotten a lot of things. So if he testified that since he was driving, he parked at the meters, do you think that's correct?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
So you parked, you believe now, in the front of the complex?
I'm not sure if it was in the front or on the side or where it was, but we parked next to the complex and we ran up to the ticket counter. That I specifically remember.
Did you have to go up a couple of flights of stairs?
I believe there's just the original flight of stairs in front of the parking area and that valet place. But at that point, we just ran over to the ticket counter.
Your brother testified about the metered parking about a couple of weeks ago.
I have, I guess, whenever he did it on cross or direct.
Mr. Menendez, have you since learned that there are no meters there at the Century City Shopping Center?
Oh, I know there's no meters there now. Whether there were at the time, I have no idea. I don't remember a meter.
So your brother does remember the meter, though, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, to his brother.
Sustained.
So you go up and you go to the theater, and what happens?
We don't go into the theater. We go to the ticket counter.
Okay, what happens there?
I believe there's two people in line. I'm not quite sure. And he eventually asked for a ticket to License to Kill. And that was a movie playing there.
And you told him, I've seen that movie. I don't have to see that movie again.
No, at that point, we weren't planning on seeing a movie. We just needed to be at a place. At the time, my parents had died. And I believe he told me later that the reason he originally didn't say he went to see Batman is because he thought his friend was in Batman. And his friend would know he wasn't there.
You have a good memory about certain things that he's testified and not so good about other things. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
No, I don't know. I don't remember exactly what he testified on the stand. I'm talking about what he told me later, either that week or the next week after my parents died. That's what I'm talking about.
So he discussed the movie, but he didn't discuss what your parents were doing when he entered that family room before you and your brother killed your parents. That was not important to you, was it?
What they would,
Objection, Your Honor, it's compound.
It's argumentative as well.
And then
Sustained.
It's noon, Your Honor. Does the court wish to take a break?
All right, we'll take our recess until 1:30. Please don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about.
either alternatively or in addition to, she has an 11:45 flight tomorrow night to Nashville. And if there were a way that we could extend the court date more to be sure of completing the testimony. And that might also help. Now, I realize there are personnel problems, and perhaps even the court has plans, the jurors has plans.
Well, it's primarily the jury and the fact that they have been assured certain schedule here. How long is this witness's testimony expected to take?
Well, I would expect simply the way things go that it would take about a day and some
Well,
day
I
and a quarter.
can only tell you that we would, if we took a break in the defendant's cross-examination, we'll deal with it as best we can. I can't assure you that her testimony would be completed at any particular time frame,
I understand.
and it's up to counsel to expedite it, I suppose, to see if you can complete it. But if you do a direct examination that takes a whole day, you can't certainly expect the cross to be truncated to accommodate the schedule.
No, I understand.
All right, what is the people's position in regards to breaking the defendant's cross-examination to accommodate the witness?
Your Honor, the problem with that is that it appears that they're not going to be able to get this witness back. And since she is testifying mainly about Erik Menendez, and I'm going to be cross-examining her, I would like to hear Erik Menendez's cross-examination, especially as regards his dealings with Dr. Oziel before cross-examining this next witness.
Well, then let's get on to it so that we can complete that.
Well, they would like to start at 3 o'clock with the expert
Oh,
witness.
no, I thought you were talking about tomorrow.
No, before you took the bench, Ms. Abramson said she wanted to break Erik Menendez's testimony today at 3 and put her expert on. And I indicated that I want a 402, at least as far as one of the aspects about which she'll be testifying. I've been given oral notification. In addition, we're going to want the reports, which we assume that she's prepared reports which previously have been unavailable to us because of the Fifth Amendment privilege, which once she takes the stand is not a problem. So I'm just saying that first of all, I don't think the cross will be all that long. But the first objection is I would like to hear what Erik Menendez has to say on cross-examination before examining her. And secondly, I'm not sure we can get everything done with a 402 hearing and the other things that must precede the testimony.
Well, I don't know exactly what it is or anything about what it is she's going to say. And if there is discovery that is to be turned over to the prosecution, I assume that the quicker that gets to the prosecution, the quicker the examination will be completed. And if there is some discovery, then you should give it to the prosecution so that we don't have to consume any more court time.
My understanding is that once the witness takes the stand, and that's the point at which the report should be turned over. Of course,
Well,
the authorities include.
Okay, if you want to apply that standard to her testimony, then it's going to delay the completion of her testimony until the prosecution has a chance to review the materials. So that's just the nature of it. And that's your choice. You can't have it both ways of speeding her testimony along and then expecting
So the question is though, whether I can get this witness on and off by tomorrow night. Now, with respect to meeting the defendant's cross-examination on Dr. Oziel, I don't see how that possibly has any bearing. Given, as far as I understand, Mr. Kuriama's cross-examined him on his sessions with Dr. Oziel.
There were lots of other areas that he hasn't touched on. Whether he does intend to go into those in regards to Dr. Oziel, I don't know. But at this point, I think we should proceed with the cross-examination of the defendant. And if you can provide the district attorney with more input as to what this witness would say, so that if there is a hearing under Evidence Code Section 402, it can be expedited, it would certainly help.
She evaluated my client with respect to the effects of sexual molestation. She is the witness that I discussed even though the statement about the crime scene. And I told her that the third area has to do
With what?
the limbic system, the neurobiology of fear and trauma. And that's what she said.
All right. Well, I have to deal with this as it's presented to me. If there is some concern that the prosecution wants to finish a certain area of the cross-examination before this witness testifies, but they are amenable to breaking off the cross before completing it to accommodate this witness's schedule. We can do that, but rather than jumping around, perhaps we can focus on that area of the cross-examination so that at least can be accomplished. And then I'll hear from the parties again in regards to the scheduling of this witness. But I can't make you any assurances, and once this witness starts, my view is that if she has obligations to be in another court testifying elsewhere, her obligation is here first, and she'll be ordered to come back to finish off her testimony, not go elsewhere to accommodate some other schedule in some other court. And we're not going to work into the midnight hours to accommodate her schedule. All right, are we ready otherwise to begin the afternoon session? Okay, then let's get both juries in. All right, everyone is present and both jury panels as well, and you may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you had indicated that your memory had been faulty regarding the actual time when you went into the room and you shot your parents. Remember that?
I don't understand what you're saying. My
That you
memory-
didn't remember the shooting.
No, I didn't.
Okay. You had testified that after you had shot all of your ammunition that you went outside and that you gave one shell, one cartridge to your brother, correct?
Yes.
And
All right, let's move on to some new area.
and what you said was that you knew she was dying. The question is, how did you know that if you didn't know that you hit anything?
I heard the noises as soon as and that's what just freaked me out, and I just wanted to get out of the room. And that's how I knew.
So you heard the noises as your parents were being shot?
No, after.
Afterwards, you heard the moaning,
Yes.
and that's how you knew that you had hit somebody.
Well, I had assumed that I hit somebody, sir. I mean, I had fired so many rounds in that room that I probably hit everything.
You know, you were testifying about going to this Century 14 Theater, correct?
Yes.
And that you parked and you and your brother went upstairs
I guess it's an upstairs, if you call it.
and you went to the box office.
Yes.
And who did the talking?
My brother.
And do you recall what he said?
He had asked about the movie License to Kill, and I'm not sure if I recall what he said then or if he told me later. I'm confusing the two. I know what happened.
You were right next to him at the time?
Yes, I was.
Now, when you went there, were you trying to get tickets for the 10:30 showing?
No, we were trying to get tickets for the 8 o'clock showing or somewhere around the 8 o'clock showing.
And what do you recall being told to you by the person at the ticket, the window?
Overall.
It wasn't told to me. It was told to my brother who was speaking, but I was right there. I don't remember exactly what she said, but in essence, that License to Kill was sold out and that we couldn't get tickets for that movie.
So this was after the movie was already over.
It was near the ending. I don't know what time it was. My time was completely distorted at the time.
If the movie started about 8 o'clock, what time was it that you arrived at the Century 14 Theater?
Assuming that my parents died at 10 o'clock, then somewhere around 10:10, 10:15, right around there.
Didn't you testify that you waited around for the police to come?
Yeah, we waited around.
And you just sat around waiting for the police to arrest you?
I sat on the stairs. I figured that the police, there's roving patrol in Beverly Hills. I figured they'd be there in, less than a minute, 2 minutes, something like that.
Do you
No one
recall-
showed up.
Do you recall the the neighbors coming in to testify about what time it was that they heard the gunshots?
Yeah,
Object to the form of the question, it's improper.
Overruled.
yeah, that's why I assume it was around 10 o'clock, because that's what they said.
Was it between 10 and 10:15 that you were shooting your parents?
My recollection is that I got home at like 9:30 and that it was probably before 10 o'clock, but if they say it was 10 o'clock, then I'm off.
And that if it was after 10 o'clock?
I didn't look at a clock. I didn't look at a watch. I don't know the exact time.
At some point, though, you gathered up all this possibly incriminating evidence, and then you went to your car.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered several times.
Overruled.
Is that right?
Yes.
So, and how long did it take you to get to the theater?
It's not far, maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes.
And when you got there, are you saying that the movie was still going?
That was my belief. Yes.
But you didn't know what time it was.
No, I didn't know what time it was.
So you didn't know whether that movie was over or not.
I didn't know. Well, I thought it was still going, but whether it was over or not, I wanted to get tickets for the 8 o'clock showing.
And your brother asked for the 8 o'clock showing of License to Kill?
I don't specifically remember the time of the showing, but it was around there for the License to Kill movie.
And what was told to him?
That it was sold out.
And this is at the end of the movie, they were willing to sell you tickets if they hadn't sold out?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
After that information was overheard by you, was there another request by your brother?
Yeah, he then asked for the Batman tickets for the 8 o'clock showing or whatever time Batman started.
And that was already over.
I don't believe it was over. I thought she said something like it's almost over, but they couldn't sell us tickets anyway. She wasn't able to sell us tickets for the 8 o'clock showing of Batman. So at that point, he just said, then fine, just give me the next ticket for the next showing.
So are you saying that you then had tickets after you killed your parents? You bought tickets for the movies?
Yeah, we had tickets for the, I guess it was 10:15, 10:30, or 11 o'clock showing, whatever showing it was. So I remember looking at the tickets and seeing that there was a timer on the tickets and that they were, I obviously couldn't give those to the police.
And the tickets were given to you by your brother?
Yes.
So you held on to the tickets.
Yes.
And what did you do with those tickets?
I had ripped them, and once I found out that they were the wrong time, I just threw them out.
When did you do that?
When?
Yes.
I believe it was in the car. I believe it was in the car that I checked the time.
And you just threw them in your car?
I don't know. I may have thrown them out the window. I really, I don't remember.
Isn't it true that when you spoke to Detective Zoller on September 17th, 1989, you told Detective Zoller that you and your brother had gone to the movies at about 8 o'clock and your mother and father were seated on the couch in the den, the family room, watching television? You remember telling him that?
I don't remember it, but I probably did. That's what I wanted him to believe.
And at that point, at around 8 o'clock, did you actually go to the Century 14?
At 8 o'clock?
Yes.
No, if I went at 8 o'clock, I would have had tickets.
In fact, didn't you have tickets?
If I had tickets, I would have given them to Detective Zoller.
How would you have done that?
When he asked me for the tickets, I would have handed it to him.
Isn't it true, sir, that you threw your pants away after they were bloodstained and the tickets would have been in your pants, so you didn't have those tickets to give to anybody?
No, that's not true. I did throw my pants away, but I had already thrown the tickets out the window or left them someplace in the car, so I didn't have the tickets in my pants at that time.
Wasn't that the plan, sir, to go to the Century 14, to buy tickets so that you could say that you were at the movies, and then when you had blood on your pants, you threw away those pants, and then you didn't have those tickets anymore?
Are you saying that
At 8 o'clock?
Lyle and I went to the theater at 8 o'clock, that I had gotten tickets, and I, by mistake, threw them away with my pants?
No, not by mistake. You got blood in your pants, I believe you said. And you
Yes.
threw your pants in a dumpster, correct?
Yes.
You had forgotten that you had your alibi tickets in your pants, didn't you?
No.
You didn't forget about that?
No, I did not. I didn't. You're saying that I threw away alibi tickets in a dumpster? No, I would.
You wouldn't have
That
done
didn't
that.
happen.
You wouldn't have done that?
I probably wouldn't have done that if this was so planned out, but that didn't happen. I threw the tickets out the window afterwards.
Did you know before you shot your parents that there would be so much blood that you would have to change your pants?
No, I hadn't even thought about it.
So you didn't think about maybe throwing away evidence in the case when you threw your pants out?
No.
When you told Detective Zoller that you had left for the movies at 8 o'clock, were you lying to him?
Yes.
Now, do you remember what your parents were going to have for dinner on Sunday night, the 20th of August?
I wasn't home. I have no idea.
Didn't you tell Detective Zoller that your parents were supposed to order, they said they were going to order Chinese food. So so possibly that's where they wanted it. That is with respect to the phone that was next to, I believe, your mother on the couch. Was that another lie?
I lied to him many times. I don't remember saying that, but I might have.
That's on the September 17th statement that you gave to Detective Zoller in Cranberry, New Jersey, at page 17. You don't recall saying that? You don't recall saying that, sir?
No.
Would you have been able to make up something like that at the spur of the moment when you were questioned like that by Detective Zoller?
Objection, counsel.
That they were in the process of eating Chinese food?
No, you had said, when the question was asked of you by Detective Zoller about the phone that was on the couch, found where your parents were killed, you said, and they were supposed to order, they said they were going to order Chinese food, so possibly that's where they wanted it, meaning the phone next to them. You mean to tell me that you just made that up at the spur of the moment?
Objection, argumentative.
Overall.
I must have. This was at 10 o'clock at night. I don't know why I would have said they were ordering Chinese food. I have no idea what they ate for dinner that night.
Because
It might be in the pictures in the kitchen. I don't know. But I have no idea.
well, why
I'm
did
confused at the question.
you say that on September 17th?
Maybe if you'd show me where I said it, I'd be able to tell you why or how.
You approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Page 17, line 7 through 9.
I would need the page before to be able to tell you what context it happened in.
Did you see the question before?
Yeah, we were talking about apparently we were talking about the phone, but I don't have the page before, so I can't tell you. Sixteen. Yeah, I'm saying I don't know why the phone was there. Why I said they were eating Chinese food, I just made it up. The whole conversation was about why the phone was underneath the pillow. And I was telling him, I don't know why the phone's underneath the pillow. And at that point, I stuttered over here and I said, maybe they were eating Chinese food.
I believe you said, and they were supposed to order, they said they were going to order Chinese food.
Right, that's exactly what I said. I said a lot of things in that conversation. I don't know. We had a long conversation about why the phone was behind the pillow. I really don't know.
And so when you said that, you just made up a lie right at the spur of the moment.
Apparently, I just made up a lie. I mean, did they order Chinese food? I don't know. I don't know what happened.
You were home that day and they told you that they were going to have Chinese food for dinner, apparently.
No.
That's according to your statement.
Definitely. Well, that's what I told them. Yes. I told them I was home all day
Why would you lie about that?
because I didn't want him to know what was going on that weekend. If he knew what was going on that weekend, it would have been pretty obvious who did this. And that was not my point of having that conversation with Detective Zoller.
So to say that you were home and your parents said that they were going to have Chinese food and then we went out to the movies, that would somehow disclose everything that you had in your mind?
You're completely misstating what happened in that conversation. Completely misstating it.
The statement is there's a question to you about the phone and you say, well, my parents had said that night that they were going to order Chinese food. Maybe that's why the phone was there.
No, what you're leaving out is that for 2 pages before that, I was telling him I didn't know why the phone was left behind the pillow. It could have fell there by accident. And then finally, I come up with they were going to order Chinese food. That's exactly what happened.
So that was a lie.
You say they were eating strawberries and
I didn't say anything, sir.
and cream. I have no idea what they were going to do that night, sir.
Yet you tell Detective Zoller that your parents told you that they were going to order Chinese food that night.
Yes.
And that was a lie.
Yes, it was.
Why did you do that?
Overruled.
He was trying to find out why the phone was behind the pillow. And he kept asking me why the phone was behind the pillow. And I was saying, I didn't know. Apparently, that's what it says in the conversation. So finally, I said they were going to order Chinese food.
You said they told you they were going to order Chinese food.
Yes.
So that means that you were there that day, apparently.
That's what I was trying to portray to Detective Zoller, yes.
That you were there that day.
I even told Detective Zoller that they were home watching a tennis match during the day.
And that's what they were doing.
Yes, that's what my brother told me they were doing. I don't know where I got the statement from. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Whether I just made it up, whether my brother told it to me, I don't know.
Are you saying that that's something that you didn't know?
Well, apparently they weren't ordering Chinese food, so I was wrong. Is that right?
I don't know what your parents were doing.
I'm going to object to this.
All right, let's not have questions asked by the witness or retorts by the prosecution. Ask your next question, please.
It's your testimony that you were gone that whole day, correct?
I was gone the entire day.
So you wouldn't have known, you wouldn't have spoken to your parents, so you wouldn't have known what they were going to have for dinner. Fair to say?
Fair to say that they did not have Chinese food for dinner
How do you know that?
Well, I'm going to object.
because
Overruled.
there's no Chinese food in the kitchen. So they didn't have Chinese for dinner. You're saying that they had blueberries for dessert. There was no Chinese food in the kitchen. I made it up. They weren't ordering Chinese food at 10 o'clock at night.
Did you check the kitchen that night to see if there was Chinese food there?
No, but I looked over the photos afterwards.
Could they have thrown away the containers?
Objection on a cause for speculation.
Sustained.
You don't know what they had that night then, do you? Since you weren't there.
If my memory is correct, there was a Domino's pizza box in the kitchen. That's my vague memory of what I saw in the pictures. But I don't know what they had for dinner because I wasn't there.
We're going to go on to the October 31st, 1989 session that you had with Dr. Oziel. Now, With regard to that meeting that you had with Dr. Oziel in October, the end of October, about a week prior to that, had you spoken to Detective Zoller on October 24th, 1989 in Beverly Hills?
I spoke to him at some time in October, yes.
And did Detective Zoller inform you that there would be a LA Times article about the killings of your parents?
I don't remember. We discussed a lot in that conversation.
And was it discussed?
I'm gonna object to this, testimony.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, directing your attention to October 31st of 1989, you came into town to have a session with Dr. Oziel, is that correct?
Objection to state testimony.
Overall.
No.
Where were you on that day?
On October,
I'm gonna object to this line of questioning based on our discussion of the sidebar just now,
Well,
until,
this is an appropriate area of cross-examination. Overall.
where was I on October 31st?
Yes.
I was at Dr. Oziel's office.
Had you been in town that day?
I believe so. I mean, I thought I was in town the whole ending of October.
Now, you went in to see Dr. Oziel after having called him up to make an appointment?
I called up his secretary.
Okay. And was that a day or two in advance?
I believed it was the day before.
And you arrived at his office. And you had been there before, correct?
Yes.
In fact, did you have a pretty good relationship with Dr. Oziel?
objection 1016.
Overall.
I hadn't seen him in many months, other than at the memorial service.
But what was your relationship with, what was your opinion of him at that point?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overall.
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard on this area, please.
It's not necessary. Overall.
My opinion of him?
Yes.
He was an easy guy to talk to about certain issues.
And so on that day, October 31st, you went in to see Dr. Oziel.
Yes.
And what did you tell him initially?
Just how I was feeling lost, and how depressed I was, and how I didn't know where my life was going anymore, and that I thought I might try out tennis for a while, and that that's what I had planned to do. And that I really wasn't sure how long I'd be living.
And were his notes correct? You said that you reviewed his notes. Were his notes correct about why you had come in and what you had said initially?
No, I don't believe so. Certain things stand out to me in his notes. The beginning doesn't. I think that's what he said, though. I'm not sure.
Well, that in fact was what happened. Is that right?
Yes.
And after telling him that you were depressed, did you ask him to leave the office so that you could talk to him? Go for a walk?
After he wasn't getting why I was depressed, I then decided to tell him.
You had not told him up to that point that you and your brother had killed your parents.
No, I hadn't.
Did you specifically request that you leave the office for a walk?
Yes, I did.
And when you took this walk, was there a point at which you decided that you were going to tell Dr. Oziel that you and your brother had killed your parents?
Yeah, I was struggling with it the entire walk. I walked up to my church. I walked to this store on Santa Monica, and I was telling him about things that I wanted to do, like write a book about my dad. And I was trying to work up the courage to tell him. It was not an easy thing to say.
Did you tell him that you had depression and that you had dreams and you had vivid pictures of your parents being murdered?
When? Before or after I told him I killed my parents?
at any time?
I could only have said that afterwards.
So you were having vivid pictures of your parents being murdered, you told him.
If he says I told him that, I don't know. I don't have vivid pictures of my parents being murdered.
Now, on October 31st, 1989, were you having vivid pictures of your parents being murdered?
I was having vivid pictures of me shooting in the fire and the horrible scene afterwards. And that's what was giving me the nightmares.
Well, these nightmares, was it because you saw the fire of your gun, or was it because you saw your mother's face and your father's face as you were shooting at them?
No, you couldn't see faces in the room that dark. It was basically because of what I saw after I went back before the 911 call.
You took a walk with Dr. Oziel,
Yes.
and you walked into a park.
Yeah, it's the church area, the Church of Good Shepherd.
And at one point, you turned to him and you said, "We did it."
That was later back by his office.
Sometime after you had taken the walk,
Yes.
you told Dr. Oziel, "We did it."
I don't know if I used those exact words, but I told him that we did it, yes.
Now, did he ask you to describe what happened there, or did you go back up to his office?
No, at that point, he started saying that he thought I was going to tell him that and that he had expected that. And I was trying to talk more about then why I was suicidal and hoping he would be able to help me out and telling him about my dreams and how I felt guilty for certain things. And it wasn't until after that we started talking about the details. But we were talking about that up on the way to his office.
So when you told him that you and your brother had killed your parents, you started to talk about the events leading up to the actual killing.
No, the first thing I told him, he asked me what happened, and I told him that Lyle and I ran in the room with 2 shotguns.
That's the first thing you said to him?
Yes.
And what exactly did you tell him?
I told him that, and I told him I told him everything that happened afterwards. I was crying at the time and pretty hysterical, and he was trying to calm me down, and I was just blurting out everything that we did afterwards.
Now, you were pretty depressed. That's why you went to see him, correct?
Yes.
You wanted to get this off of your chest, that you and your brother had killed your parents.
No.
You didn't want to get that off your chest?
I did want to get it off my chest, but that's not why I went to see him. I hadn't planned on telling him.
But once you started to tell him, it started to flow out of you, correct? You started to feel better about telling somebody what you did.
Once I started to tell him, and after I had told him downstairs that we did it.
Yes.
Yeah, I told him. I told him what happened.
And you told him why you did it?
No, that didn't come up next. He just wanted to know. He was asking a lot of questions. He was asking me where we got the guns. He was asking me what happened then and what happened there, and he wanted to know more and more and more. And then he started asking who knew what and what did the police know and so on.
Do you remember his note stating that after you told him that we did it, you walked into the office and began to reveal in elaborate detail all the events leading up to and following the actual murder of your parents? Do you remember those notes that he had?
And that's what his notes apparently say. Obviously, that's not true. And
Why is that so obvious?
it's obvious because he says that in his notes, but he doesn't give the details that he says I gave him.
Now, he says in his notes, these notes were done shortly after these 2 sessions he testified, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained. Objection sustained.
Do you recall, sir, the notes indicating that you,
I'm going to object to this as hearsay. That's not our client.
I don't object to the use of the notes as well, Your Honor, versus what the witnesses testified to. Witnesses, you know.
Overruled.
Mr. Menendez, you've
I'm also
indicated,
going to object, Your Honor, to the use of the notes based on prior 402 rules of this court.
Mr. Menendez, you indicated that you read the notes, correct?
Yes, I did.
And those notes indicated that you specifically said that you had watched a television show which dealt with the son murdering a father, correct?
Does it use that exact language?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, that's what he says I said in the notes.
And that you and your brother Lyle had begun to talk about how similar your father was to the father presented in the television show. You remember that?
Object, this area is already been done.
Is that
Yes, I
correct?
believe he also says that in the notes.
He indicated that you told him that Lyle had not seen the entire program, but only the last portion of the show, correct?
If he indicates that, then that's what he indicates.
And that you told Dr. Oziel that the conversation about killing your father was casual at first, with you and your brother asking each other what it would be like if perhaps the controlling influence in your life that dominated you had in your mind, trapped you, made you feel inadequate, and prevented you from doing what you wanted to do was simply not there anymore. You and your brother discussed that, didn't you?
Yeah, that's
Your Honor, this has been asked and answered 3 times.
that particular line struck me as odd, because he said we talked about it in a casual way as if that's what people would do. But that's also what he says in his notes.
And that you and your brother tossed back and forth the notion of how your lives wouldn't be worth living if your father continued to exist.
Yes, he says all of that and a lot more in his notes.
And you weren't sure whether you would want to continue living without your father out of your life, correct?
I believe so, if that's what you're reading from his notes.
Now, you indicated that your father, and this is, I'm not going to go on the statement right now, but you've testified that your father was very controlling, that he wanted to tell you what school to go to, is that right?
Yes,
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered this morning.
That he was going to decide upon your career, correct?
Asked and answered.
yeah, Mr. Kuriyama, how this came up in the conversation is this is exactly what Dr. Oziel knew from talking to my father and from dealing with him. And the only things that he mentions in those notes are exactly what he knows about my father, because that's what he was telling me.
Mr. Menendez, did your father tell Dr. Oziel that you and your brother had watched this movie on the Billionaire Boys Club and you decided to kill him based on that movie?
Objection to the form of the question, assumes facts not.
Overruled.
Jackie, I
No.
hear say permission.
Overall.
No, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to how he described my father is exactly the image that he had of my father.
And that's exactly how you've testified here about your father controlling your life and telling you what to do, correct?
No, I said here a lot more things that my father did to me than just control me. That is for sure.
And in
And,
fact, part
Dr.
of
Oziel
it,
I don't
does-
think the witnesses finished answering.
Yes, you make.
And Dr. Oziel doesn't testify to any of that. If he thinks that I killed my dad because he was controlling, which is what he thought and what I led him to believe, because I wasn't going to tell him why, that's exactly right. And that's exactly what's in his notes. And he
So-
says it over and over again.
so what you told him that day is what he put down in his notes.
No, that's what we discussed.
Okay. So this whole discussion that you had about the Billionaire Boys Club was bogus, is that right?
No, it wasn't bogus. It didn't happen. I'm talking about my dad being controlling and dominating, as he puts it. That we talked about, and that we talked about on the second, too.
And in fact, you were getting tired of that, weren't you?
Excuse me? When
You were
was I?
getting tired of your father telling you what to do and telling you where you were going to live, what your career would be. You got tired of that. You are now a man. You are now 18 years old, and you were tired of that, weren't you, sir?
No, I was tired of the sex. Him telling me what to do had happened all of my life, and I expected it to go on for the rest of my life. It was the other part that I was tired of.
Now, you remember testifying that your father in September of 1988 had threatened to disinherit you, correct?
In
September, I believe you testified September of
No,
1988.
he didn't threaten to do that.
He did not?
No, he told me that I was. He didn't threaten to do that.
And you also testified that I believe you said in May of 1989, your mother told you that your father wanted to disown you.
Yes.
And you felt that that meant that you would be completely cut off from the family, and you did not want that, did you?
No, that's not at all what I thought. I knew that he wouldn't cut me off from the family. My relationship with my dad was not one that he was just going to end and kick me out of the house. There was no way he was going to do that. And that's why it scared me. When my mom said that my dad was going to disown me because I wasn't telling him enough details of my tennis, it frightened me because I didn't know what that meant.
In May of 1989, you told your father, I'm not going to tell you what I did with my tennis practice. I'm a man now. I'm an adult. I'm not telling you anything else. Isn't that true?
No, I would never say that to my dad.
Isn't that your testimony, that you told your father you weren't going to tell him your every move in a particular day, and that's why your father decided to disown you?
No, if I would have told my father that, he wouldn't have disowned me. He would have beat the hell out of me. That's not something you tell my dad. What I was doing was just not telling him what I was doing. And when he was asking me detailed questions about my tennis, I was trying to be evasive. And I was just saying I was fine. I was trying to keep it private. I wanted to keep some things secret from him. But I certainly didn't tell my dad that.
What else did you want to keep secret from your father?
I wanted to keep secret from my father different girlfriends that I had had. I wanted to keep secret from my father everything.
When you say everything, what do you mean?
I just didn't want the intrusiveness in my life. He would tell me what to do, and that's fine. But in terms of exactly what I was doing on every particular day, I didn't feel like I had any privacy. I didn't feel like I had any. I knew who I was.
And because of that, you were getting tired of your father, weren't you?
I was getting tired of a certain part of our relationship, which I desperately wanted to end when I went to college. But him controlling me and telling me what to do happened since I was born. That was normal.
And now that you were a man, you're almost 19 years old, you didn't want that anymore.
Which
You didn't
part?
want your dad telling you what to do anymore.
I thought he would have less control over what I did every day when I went to college. But no, I expected him to tell me what college I went to and what I was going to do afterwards. I had always expected to go into business with my dad and that sort of thing.
In fact, you testified that your mother wanted you to go to UC Berkeley, correct?
Yes, she did.
And isn't it true that your father wanted you to go away too and go to UC Berkeley?
No, my mom wanted me to go to UC Berkeley, and my dad would not hear of it. I was staying as close as possible to him.
Sir, do you recall a young man by the name of Ed Fenno who lived with your family in the summer of 1989?
Yes, Ed was a friend of mine.
And do you remember Ed Fenno being there when you got your acceptance letter to UC Berkeley?
He wasn't right there. I remember walking in the door from the mailbox, opening up UC Berkeley, astonished that I had been accepted, and I immediately called my mom because I was ecstatic, and she was real happy as well.
Do you remember your father wanting you to go to UC Berkeley and that you didn't want to leave home? You wanted to stay around. You wanted to go to UCLA, correct?
No, definitely not.
So if he had heard your father tell you UC Berkeley is the best school, go there, would Ed Fennell be lying?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay, that calls for multiple hearsay, and calls for conclusion by the
Overall.
witness. Your Honor,
No,
Overall.
Is that right, sir?
no. Ed's a nice person. I doubt. I'm sure my dad was happy that I got accepted into UC Berkeley, but my dad had always told me that if I got into UCLA, that's where I was going, and that's what happened.
Isn't it true? And in this conversation, you said you didn't want to go to you didn't want to go to UC Berkeley. You wanted to stay in LA.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question today, and what conversation, and also
Can you
object on the basis of hearsay.
Can you specify which conversation
Yes, Your
you're
Honor.
talking about?
The day that you got this acceptance letter to UC Berkeley, and Ed Fennell was there at your house and heard your father tell you to go to UC Berkeley. You recall that day?
Objection, Your Honor, the form of the question, since that's not in evidence. And
Rephrase the question, please.
Do you recall Ed Fennell being at your house in the summer of 1989?
Asked and answered.
Overall.
In the summer of 1989, no, I don't.
When do you recall him being there?
In November and December of 1988.
When is it that you got this acceptance letter to UC Berkeley?
If he says he was there, then I guess during that time, I didn't think I got the acceptance letter until February.
So Ed Fennell stayed at your house for an extended period of time, for a period of months.
I think it was 2 months. I don't remember the exact time.
At some point, you do recall him living with you?
Yes.
And do you recall your father on the day that you got this acceptance letter telling you that that was the best school you got into and urging you to leave home and go to UC Berkeley?
Definitely not. But he had said that that was the best school that I had gotten into. And he was definitely happy that I got into a campus like UC Berkeley. But the real school that I wanted to go to was Brown. And my dad would not let me go there.
Was Ed Fennell there when you told your father you didn't want to go away to school at Berkeley, you wanted to stay in Los Angeles?
I hadn't been accepted to UCLA at the time. And there was no school in Los Angeles for me to go to. I don't remember the conversation that you're talking about, though, to be perfectly honest.
You've seen the reports.
No, I haven't seen those reports of Ed's.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Now, your mother told you she wanted you to leave to Berkeley, correct?
Yes.
And your father was very proud of you for having been accepted into UC Berkeley.
Yes, he was.
And you've testified that you liked to spend a lot of time in Westwood. Whenever you wanted to be by yourself, you wanted to have lunch, you'd go to Westwood. You liked LA, didn't you?
I went to Westwood a lot with the tennis team. That was really a hangout place for a lot of kids.
Now, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can place your answer.
Yeah, it was a place that I knew every part of, and but I remember. Well, it doesn't matter. Go on.
You felt very comfortable at the UCLA campus, didn't you?
I had never walked around the UCLA campus. I mean, before I was accepted into UCLA, I didn't know much about the campus at all.
You spent a lot of time in Westwood, is that right, when you moved here?
Yes. Once I moved to Beverly Hills, I did.
Okay, and you moved to Beverly Hills before you got accepted into UCLA?
Yes.
So you would go to UCLA before you got accepted into UCLA?
Objection on a Westwood and UCLA, and not the same.
Objection overruled.
Westwood and UCLA. Westwood's a city. UCLA is a school. Westwood borders on UCLA, but there's nothing to do in UCLA if you're not going to UCLA. So,
did you like the area of Westwood, which is right next to UCLA?
Certainly.
And you spent a lot of time there?
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, isn't it true that you said that you wanted to stay in LA to go to school?
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, I said that I had not been accepted into any campus in UCLA. In LA. My dad had told me it was still when Ed was living there. It must have been November or December, that he knew a man who was going to basically get me into UCLA, and that's where he wanted me to go.
Now, do you recall, we're going to get back to the Dr. Oziel statement. Do you recall that you told Dr. Oziel that you didn't know if you would want to continue living unless your father was out of your life?
No, that's not what I said to Dr. Oziel.
That's not true?
No, it isn't. That's what he said to me, though.
In fact, you were afraid in May of 1989, when you were rebelling against your father, that he was going to cut you off. He was going to cut you off totally. Correct?
Rebelling against my father?
Yes.
You don't rebel against my father. You do what my father says. You do it the way he says. You do it the way he wants. There is no rebelling. There's rebelling in the sense of not telling him everything. But if he finds out about it and he asks about it, you do what he says. I never rebelled against him.
So if you didn't do what he said, he would disown you.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure. I mean, he never said that to me.
Your mother told you that.
That's what my mom told me on a phone in Dr. Oziel's office. And I was very scared about that. I did not know what disowning meant, because it certainly didn't mean kicking me out of the house. So I was sort of worried about that.
Now that's what disown means. I mean, were you afraid to just get kicked out of the house so you wouldn't have everything that you had growing up, all the tennis lessons, the car, and everything that you got? Were you afraid that you would lose that when your mother told you that your father was going to disown you and cut you off from them?
I'm going to object to the question. Actually, it's the first part when Mr. Brown.
Right, excluding the first part where there was a definition of the word disown. Do you understand the question?
The question then is, was I afraid of being disowned?
Yes.
No, I was never going to be cut off from my parents in terms of their wealth. They had tons of money, and I really would have loved to go on away to a boarding school. That would have been a dream. But being kicked out of the house, that wasn't going to happen.
So when you testified in front of these two juries that you thought you were disinherited, you knew that wasn't true. You said you'd never get cut off from their wealth. Is that right?
While they were alive, of course, they were going to make sure their sons had everything and looked best in society. I was disinherited. I was out of the will. But obviously, they were going to keep sending me to school and paying for my cars and paying for my clothes and my tennis and everything.
That's what you assumed?
Well, that's what was going to happen.
How do you make that statement that you know that's what was going to happen?
Well, if I had never told my brother what was happening between my dad and I would have gone on to UCLA, and it would have continued throughout UCLA. And assuming I had lived and hadn't decided to just end it, it would have gone on. They'd always given me everything my entire life in terms of financial stuff.
You had been well taken care of all your life. And so when your father, through your mother, said that he was going to disown you, you were worried about that, weren't you? I
was not well taken care of my entire life. I had every dime I ever wanted, though. That's for sure. But I was definitely worried when she said they were going to disown me. I didn't think for a moment they were going to kick me out on the street. That wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to be able to explain that to their relatives and to their friends. That simply wasn't going to happen in their social status and the image that they wanted to portray about this family. And that's why I was concerned about what she meant by disown.
Now, you were hoping that they wouldn't kick you out. You were an adult. They could have just said, okay, you're on your own now.
That would have been great.
Excuse me, Your Honor, but I don't think that was the question I did read.
All right, just state your objection. All right, so objection sustained. Rephrase the question, please.
Isn't it true, sir, that your parents, you are now an adult, your parents could have just cut you off as your mother had told you your father intended?
They could not have done that.
Now, do you recall telling Dr. Oziel, back to the October 31st, 1989 statement, you recall telling Dr. Oziel that after watching this movie on the BBC, that you and Lyle had the discussion about your father being similar to the father depicted in the BBC movie, and that you turned to each other and you were trying to decide whether or not you would make the clear decision to engage in murder, correct?
Objection.
No.
Objection. Compound.
No, that never took place, and it was certainly never said in that session.
You recall in Dr. Oziel's notes that he said that you told him that it had to be soon and could not be delayed, that Lyle wanted to wait to plan it out more thoroughly. Do you remember that?
We object to that hearsay and confrontation grounds as to Lyle Menendez.
Overruled.
Remember
Excuse me, that statement?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I remember reading that. If it's in there, then that's what he wrote in there.
And that you told
So are
Dr.
you asking whether he made this statement to Dr. Oziel? Is that what your question is?
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's phrase it that way.
Okay. Did you tell Dr. Oziel that?
No.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel, this is the next line, that you and your brother drove to San Diego, obtained false identification, and purchased 2 shotguns with false identification, and then you drove back to Los Angeles? Do you remember telling Dr. Oziel that?
I told him that. I told him part of that much earlier in the conversation when he asked me why we hadn't been arrested by the police if Lau and I had bought shotguns, and I told him that we had used my brother's friend's ID, and that's probably why we hadn't. But him and I did talk back and forth about then how long it would be until they traced my brother's friend's ID.
Mr.
That's
Menendez?
when we had that conversation. But I certainly never said that I obtained identification down there. That I didn't say. That wasn't true.
You used false identification.
Yeah, that's not what he says.
Did he guess that you had gone to San Diego, or did you tell him that?
I told him that.
Now, did you also tell him that you drove back to Los Angeles and you had an alibi in the form of a wine and cheese tasting party?
When in the conversation are you asking? I told him that we had gone to the movies. I told him that we dropped off the guns. I told him about the wine tasting thing. Or the taste of LA. I told him all of that, what we did afterwards.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that shortly before the party began, you surprised your parents in the room in which your parents were found murdered? Did you tell him that?
I would not have told him that, because that isn't true.
You had testified earlier that you may have said that you used the word surprised.
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
No, that's not what I'm referring to. Isn't true. My parents died apparently right when the wine tasting thing was ending, not when it was beginning. So he's wrong about that.
Well, okay, so he's wrong about whether it was before or after the wine tasting.
He got a lot of things garbled. I told him it so quickly that.
Let's then focus on the other part of that statement, sir. That you surprised your parents in the room that your parents were murdered in.
Your Honor, I'm going to object and cite the court to page 16270 of the transcript.
Overruled.
Excuse me, 17. Now it's 16270.
Overruled. This is
You may answer, sir.
proper cross-examination.
That I surprised them. I said we ran in on them. I don't believe I used the word surprise.
You testified earlier that you may have, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony at page 16270.
Rephrase the question, please.
16271.
Did you ever say that you went in and surprised your parents?
I don't remember saying that.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you walked in first and shot your father?
No, I said I walked in first, but I didn't say who shot who.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that your brother followed you to finish off the job?
Are you asking what I told Dr. Oziel and he says I said in the notes? Because what he testified to was different from what he said in those notes. So which one are you referring to?
Did you say that?
That I surprised my father?
Did you say, we've already gone by that one, did you say that you went into the room first, shooting your father?
I said that I went into the room and I just started shooting.
So he didn't make that up.
He made up the shooting father part, but not the other part.
In fact, you have testified here, you don't know who you shot.
And that's what I told him.
So you told him you entered first and you started shooting. You don't know who you shot, and your brother followed behind you and he shot at whoever he shot at.
Yes.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that the intention was that your mother had to be killed because she would be a witness and because she would be miserable and probably suicidal without your father anyway? Did you tell him that?
The second part he had talked about, but the part about being a witness, and I believe he also says somewhere in there that we could not have killed our father without killing our mother and that it wouldn't have been possible or something like that, was never discussed and doesn't make any sense.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that your mother would be a link to you and your brother having committed the murder?
No.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that as you entered with your pump shotgun, your father cried out, "No, no, no"?
I don't believe I ever used the word pump shotgun. And I said that my dad yelled out. My dad never cried out anything in his entire life. He just didn't cry out.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have told him that either.
All right. So what you want to do is say that you didn't say pump shotgun. You simply said shotgun.
Well, you keep using the word pump shotgun, but I don't refer to guns that way.
Okay. This is what the notes say, the pump shotgun. So you're saying you didn't say pump shotgun.
No.
Is that correct?
Could you give me a page 7?
Page 4.
Can I have a moment to,
Mr. Menendez, you are quarreling with the use of pump shotgun. Did you simply say you entered with your shotgun?
Probably.
Okay. And that you recalled your father yelling out, "No, no, no," rather than crying out, "No, no, no"?
He says crying out, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Right.
And that simply could not have happened.
What did you tell him then?
I told him that my dad yelled no while we were firing.
And do you recall telling Dr. Oziel that your father died first?
No, I don't recall telling him that. I'm sure he could have assumed that, though.
How would he assume that?
If my mother was still making a noise and my dad wasn't, then he would have assumed that.
Would you have told him that maybe?
Maybe. I don't
Now, the
remember.
next line, your mother, was moaning and did not die immediately. Did Dr. Oziel make that up?
I'd like to approach on this line of objective. Dr. Zuzman.
Counsel, let's not argue it. If you want to approach, you can do that.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Not present. All participants in the trial are present. Do counsel wish to discuss anything before the jury comes in?
Detective Zoller went downstairs to see if jurors were present, and I believe he saw some jurors looking at,
Yes, they were reading.
reading the sign. So I didn't personally view them, but maybe the court needs to inquire.
Oh.
I think that was referring to the court.
It was not referring to the court. It was referring to individuals by name. As far as I understand it anyway, do other parties wish to be heard?
Well, our concern, Your Honor, is that our jurors, if they've read these signs, will take it that that person is somehow connected with this case. And in fact, I, not knowing the situation, when I saw the sign, assumed it was a female supporter of the Menendez brothers who, unconnected to us, was, for whatever reason in her own mind, staging a protest relating to this case. That, in fact, is not the case. But I'm concerned that our jurors will see that and somehow make a connection which is not there. And it would be our suggestion to the court that the court dispel the notion that that woman is in any way, shape, or form connected with this case.
Okay, anyone else want to be heard? Anything to say?
I didn't see it. All I know is that there is a little group of smoking jurors from both juries that are always out on the front paper in the courthouse.
The bailiff informed me that there were some jurors out there, whether they're smokers or otherwise, I don't know. All right, we will make inquiry then for the purpose of finding out if any of the jurors have seen this and will it influence them in any way. The only question I have is as to whether council have any suggestions as to whether that inquiry should be done of the jurors one at a time or as a group. Do you have any preference in that regard?
I think we ought to bring them out and find out who saw it. So, or do you want to just interview all 35?
I think you should bring them in individually, or else you're gonna tell the others things they don't know.
Well, it could very well be that there has been some communication by jurors, since this really is not something that is directly related to the case, and they might not feel there's any constraints to them in discussing it. It would be very time consuming to do it one at a time. What I'll do is have one jury panel at a time come in, and then I'll inquire of them whether they have been out during the recess or have heard of any activities out there during the recess. And those that have, we will make further inquiry and deal with it that way. So let's first deal with the blue jury, since they are closest at hand, and have them come into the jury box and we'll inquire of them. All right, the blue jury is in the courtroom, and before we proceed with the testimony, I just want to discuss some matters with you. During the recess, some of you might have been outside the courthouse and been towards the front of the courthouse. And let me ask, first of all, were any of you outside in front of the courthouse? Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, quite a few. All right, and did any of you have occasion to see anybody carrying signs or distributing things out there? Okay. I assume that you did read those signs, whatever they said. I haven't seen them, but they've been reported to me. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Regardless of what the specific language of those signs, obviously people have the right to free speech, and we're not going to in any way infringe upon that right. But at the same time, both sides to this lawsuit have a right to a fair trial. And as far as we're concerned in this courtroom, that is the paramount concern that we have, that both sides receive a fair trial. And the important thing is that you as jurors make your decision based only on the evidence you hear in this courtroom and the instructions I give you on the law. Will you all be able to do that? Do any of you feel that anything that has transpired by what you saw outside will have any impact on your ability to follow my instructions on the law and make your decision based on the evidence you hear in the courtroom? All right. And will you put out of your mind whatever you saw and heard out there and make your decision based on only what happens here in the courtroom? Okay. And if these things happen in the future and whatever might occur, and you can visualize anybody coming out and displaying signs saying anything in the world, again, your decision is and must be one made only on what you hear in this courtroom, your fair evaluation of the evidence in the courtroom, and my instructions on the law. Will you all be able to do that? Yes, sir. Okay. Other than what I have already discussed with you individually, has anybody, and other than what we just discussed just now, has anybody been exposed to anything outside of the courtroom in any form whatsoever other than what you've already told me about? Okay, Mr. Emerson, we'll talk to you. The lightning has struck again. All right. Anybody else? Okay. All right, then we'll discuss that with Mr. Emerson, and then hopefully shortly we'll be able to start up again with the testimony. So it shouldn't be very long, and I apologize for the delay, but I want to go through the discussion with Mr. Emerson and then also with the other jury, make the same inquiry of them as I have with you. And you should understand that neither side in this lawsuit had anything to do with what was going on out there in the front of the courthouse. That person has no connection with either side in this case, and you shouldn't draw any inferences whatsoever in that regard. You all understand that as well? Okay. All right. If you'd all go back in the jury room, and we'll talk just briefly with Mr. Emerson. Okay, Mr. Emerson, you're on.
You ought to just unload me, I seem to be a magnet.
What happened this time?
I was in a restaurant on Saturday afternoon, and a couple at the next table, I recognized the Alpine building here.
I mean, somebody who works in the building,
I
or?
believe an employee, yeah. I've seen her here all along, so I assume she's an employee, and she seemed to have privilege to see back corridors and what have you. Was speaking to her companion, and all I heard was, on the Menendez case, that in referring to you, we're speaking to a commissioner, and you said something to Pam, and by this time I got to her table and asked her to please hold it down. I couldn't move.
Go through that one once more.
She stated that she either was present or overheard you speaking to a commissioner, and I have no idea who. And that you then told something to Pam. I assume she means prosecutor. And by this time I had shut her up.
And did you hear anything more?
No, that's all I heard, and I didn't know what that means.
Okay, well, none of that happened as far as what that person was talking about. None of those things occurred. I can assure you of that. So would that, whatever you heard, have any impact on how you decide this case? Would you put that out of your mind and make your decision based only on what happens in the courtroom? Did you draw any inferences from that anyway? Okay, and would you refrain and follow my instruction not to say this, anything about this to anybody else?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. You can go back in the jury room. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Did counsel have any inquiry of Mr. Sullivan? I'm sorry, Mr. Emerson, further along those lines? Okay, we can certainly try to have him identify that person if he could.
Are there secretaries that work in the back that would be coming out to the public area?
Well, there are court clerks and people who work in the building. I can make a statement to you that I've never spoken to any commissioners about this case, and I obviously haven't spoken to Ms. Ferraro about this case, so Ms. Bozanich about this case. So as far as the basis of whatever it was he heard, I have no idea.
Are there any other Pams who work in the building or secretaries?
You got me. I really don't know. All right. What we can do is have the bailiff discuss the matter further with Mr. Emerson and see if he can assist in identifying that individual. So when we have a chance to do that, we'll have that discussion with Mr. Emerson to see if he can pinpoint who it was that he heard making these statements. Well, he does seem to be present when people talk, but he's also very forthright in bringing those matters to our attention. So, yeah, well, let's go on to the other jury here. And yeah.
I don't think the record reflects what the placard said. Does the court want the record to reflect that?
I don't know if it really matters at this point. All right, let's get the other jury panel. Okay, in the trial, we have the gold jury in the courtroom, and let me say that we're having a brief discussion with the jurors before we resume with the testimony. And the first thing I want to ask is whether or not any of you were outside the courthouse during the recess. If you have, would you? Okay, many of you were then. And did you happen to see the lady with the sign walking around? Any of you? Okay. And those of you who did see it, did some of you then talk about it with the other jurors who might not have been outside? Just mention it. Did you say something to others? We were outside and we saw this and what the sign said. Okay. So do all of you understand pretty much what I'm asking about, whether or not you're aware of what was going on outside, somebody walking around with a sign? Okay. Let me then say a few things about that. Number one, as you're aware, everybody has a right to free speech and free expression. People have a right to say and think what they want. But in this courtroom, the important thing for the jury to understand is that your role is to decide this case and make a fair decision based on the evidence presented in the courtroom and my instructions on the law. And my first question to all of you, the 17 of you here, is whether or not anything you saw outside the courtroom during this recess will have any impact or affect you in any way in your ability to make a decision based on the evidence presented in the courtroom and my instructions on the law. Right? Will you all be able to disregard whatever it is that you saw or heard outside and make your decision based only on the evidence presented in the courtroom and my instructions on the law? All right. Okay. I can't account for what other people think or what someone writes or why they do things. That's, went in someone else's head. The important thing is that you make your decision based only on what happens here in this courtroom and my instructions on the law. Will you all be able to do that? Okay. And you should also be assured that nobody involved in this case, neither side has any involvement in what that person was doing, that that person was acting on her own, and none of the parties involved in this case have any anything to do with that. And the important thing is that you will make a fair decision in this case, a decision that would be fair to both sides. Would you be able to do that? All right, then let me ask all of you an additional question, whether or not any of you, other than what you've already told me in other discussions, have any of you been exposed to anything about this case outside the courtroom in any form whatsoever? Okay. All right, then we'll proceed with the trial. We'll get the other jury out and Mr. Menendez back on the witness stand, and then we'll proceed. Okay, we have both jury panels back in court. We're ready to resume with the cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, again referring to October 31st, 1989, and your session with Dr. Oziel. Did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father had yelled out no?
Yes, I did.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father was the first to die?
I don't remember.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that your mother did not die after the first volley of gunshots?
Yes.
And that she was moaning and trying to crawl?
I guess I said she was trying to call. I recall my brother telling me that later.
And you
So,
you actually heard the moaning from your mother yourself?
Yes.
And you told Dr. Oziel that?
Yes.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that you had to go out to reload the shotguns?
I said that we had to go out to reload, yes.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that your brother Lyle went in and finally killed your mother?
No, I didn't say that. At the time, Lyle and I believed that Mom was already dead. I believe I also said that, but I definitely said that Lyle fired the last shot.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you picked up the casings, the shotgun shell casings?
Yes, I did.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that you took a change of clothes with you after the shooting?
I told him that I changed my pants, but I don't believe I would have said I took a change of clothes with me.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that both of you and your brother, had gotten blood on your clothing?
I may have.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you changed your clothing and put the clothing into a bag and then dumped it into a dumpster?
Yes.
Did you tell Dr. Elzeel that you and your brother drove to Mulholland Drive and you took the shotguns and you took them down an embankment, the side of a hill, about 150 to 250 feet?
No, I didn't tell him how far down, but I told him that we had gone to Mulholland Drive to dump the guns.
How far did you tell him you took the guns down?
I didn't tell him how far. At least I don't have any memory of telling him how far.
Did you tell him, Dr. Elzeel, that you had covered the guns up?
I don't remember if I told him that.
Did you, in fact, cover the guns up?
I threw some branches, not some branches, just some loose dirt on them. I wasn't able to cover them up, though.
After you covered up the guns, did you indicate to him that you had new clothing, you put the new clothing on and you went to the party?
Yeah, he gets that all garbled up in terms of sequence and how things happened. When things happened. But at some point, I relayed everything that happened after my parents died.
Did you tell Dr. Elzeel that you returned home after the party and that you went into the house?
I don't believe I used the word party, but I definitely told him that we returned home after the Taste of LA.
And did you tell Dr. Elzeel that you looked at your mother and father?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell Dr. Elzeel that your father's head was bulging out
Yes, I did.
and that parts of your mother and father were blown apart all over the room?
Yes.
Do you recall telling Dr. Elzeel that somebody called 911?
I believe I said Lau called 911. I don't know what he says.
Do you recall telling Dr. Elzeel that the police later let you and your brother go back to your cars that night?
No, I didn't tell him that. I told him that after we had interviewed with Detective Edmonds, that we knew that we had gone back to the car and they told us that we couldn't get into the car, that they had to search it, and that we had left some shells in there and some papers in there, and that if they searched the car, we would have been arrested. And so that the next morning, we were able to manage to get into the car before they searched it. It's essentially what I told them.
Did you tell Dr. Elzeel that since you had an alibi, being the party, that you and your brother were not immediately suspects?
No, I wouldn't have told them that because the party, this Taste of LA wasn't an alibi.
I'm sorry,
It wasn't an alibi.
you never told Dr. Elzeel that you had an alibi?
I told him what I told the police about the movies and the Taste of LA, yes.
You never referred to that as an alibi?
I may have.
Now, did you tell Dr. Elzeel that the police initially thought that the mafia or some business connection had murdered your parents?
Yes, I did. I'm not sure actually if I told him that or that was common knowledge.
Did you tell him that the guilt was overwhelming?
Yeah, I told him that it was too hard to live with.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that the police had not recovered the weapons?
Yes, we had talked about what the police knew.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that there was no way to link you and your brother since the fingerprints in the house were your fingerprints since you lived there?
No, I told him the one way that I thought they would link us eventually.
You told Dr. Oziel that you thought that the police would link you through fingerprints?
No, I told Dr. Oziel that I thought they'd link us through using my brother's ID.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel, since there were no witnesses and since no one heard anything and since no one could link you and your brother to the weapons and the weapons were not found, that there was no way to link you to this crime?
I told him that there was almost no way to link us to the crime other than the guns. I believe we even had a discussion about the fact that we were being taped while watching, while buying the guns, and that eventually the police might be able to find the tape. And I believe I asked him when they recycle those tapes or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact part about it.
You believe you had a discussion with Dr. Oziel on October 31st, 1989 concerning your fear that the video camera was operating when you made the purchase of the guns in San Diego?
Yes, I'm almost positive when he was talking about what the police knew. I was telling him everything that the police could know or might find out and didn't know.
Did you or your brother at any time call down to a Big Five concerning how long they kept their videotapes?
No, we didn't call.
But you were concerned about that.
I was concerned about that, yes, afterwards. I didn't want to go to jail.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you believed there was no way to tie you or your brother into buying the weapons at the San Diego gun store?
No, I told him just the opposite.
You told him that there was a way for the police to find you?
Yes, I told them that if they checked the tape or if they linked Donovan Goodrow, that they would find him. And I specifically remember it because Donovan had called the house. Detective Zoller, I guess, told Lyle, and Lyle told me or something like that, that Donovan Goodrow had called the house that morning or the next day after my parents had died and had spoken with Detective Zoller. And we figured that he'd link it up.
Donovan Goodrow didn't know where his license was, did he?
No, he didn't.
Objection, I call for speculation.
Sir, did you call Donovan Goodrow and tell him on the 18th of August that you had used his license to purchase shotguns?
Certainly not.
So there's no way that even Donovan would know that you purchased shotguns on his license, isn't that right?
No, I'm not saying Donovan would know that. No, definitely not.
In fact, it wasn't your picture on that license.
I didn't think the picture mattered.
It wasn't your name on the license.
No, it was a friend of my brother's.
And it was a fake ID that you used in a town 120 miles from here that you used to purchase these shotguns, correct?
Yes.
And you told Dr. Oziel that there was no way on earth to link you and your brother to the purchase of those shotguns in San Diego. Isn't that correct?
No, I told him just the opposite.
You told him that the police would find out that you had used your brother's acquaintance's ID to buy shotguns in San Diego. You thought that?
No, I told him that the police might find out, and that's why we had the discussion about how long the tapes of a monitor that monitors everything that happens in a gun transaction last. And Donovan was one of my brother's old best friends, and I explained that to him, not that he was an acquaintance.
Did you think that the police had any idea whatsoever that you had used a bogus ID in purchasing these shotguns?
No, I didn't know I was hoping that they didn't know that, and I had figured that they didn't know that since they hadn't arrested us. But I knew that we were the main suspects at that point.
On October 31st, you believed you were not suspects?
No, I believe that we were. I started believing it after the conversation with Detective Zoller on the 17th.
Of September?
Yes.
Was that, do you recall having another conversation with Detective Zoller on October 24th?
Objection, Your Honor.
On the basis.
We had discussed this at this time.
Had you gotten that piece of paper that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you want to discuss that?
Sure, we can.
Okay. All right, we're now organized to take our recess for the afternoon. There's still, by the estimate of counsel, a fair amount of examination before the direct or the cross and the redirect is completed of this witness, and that'll resume tomorrow. And just to remind you all not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else, and not form any opinions about the matter. And don't permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this case outside of the courtroom. And we'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and you'll see both juries back here then.